Chapter 1234. Seeing Another Bewitching Beauty. Lin Yuqi's each and every action was seductive and bewitching. Empress Luan Xing was born a stunning beauty, and even her silhouette was enough to draw people into endless fantasies. Meanwhile, this woman accentuated her charm through various kinds of small movements. She swayed her bottom left and right. This was so seductive that people would barely be able to control themselves. With each sway, the shape of her curvaceous bottom would be accentuated, revealing the breathtaking assets of this stunning beauty. If people saw this, they would feel an urge to reach over and caress her bottom so that they could personally experience its fullness, suppleness, and softness. Ling Han guarded his mind closely. This was another bewitching beauty. To his surprise, Lin Yuqi's hairstyle wasn't one of a married woman. Even though the maid in azure had referred to her as Milady One, generally speaking, married women would tie their hair into a bun. Young unmarried women definitely wouldn't adopt such a hairstyle. Lin Yuqi's silky black hair rolled down her back, only revealing a tiny bit of her snow-white neck. The silky black and snow-white formed an intense contrast. "This has nothing to do with me," Ling Han immediately said in his mind. Although she wasn't married, did that mean he could take her as his own? Clearly not. Thus, he naturally didn't need to take her charm to heart. The carriage was only so big, yet Lin Yuqi somehow managed to walk for a long time. She seared the image of her bewitching figure into Ling Han's mind. Only now did she turn around with a smile and say, "Please sit, young Master Ling." Her smile was as beautiful as 100 blossoming flowers. The entire carriage seemed to become more radiant and warm. Ling Han smiled faintly as he sat down. He then asked, "Madam, for what reason did you invite me?" He was in a hurry to go to the Water Element Valley at this moment, so he truly didn't want to waste any time. Lin Yuqi almost jumped up in anger upon seeing the hint of impatience in his eyes. She was confident in her charm, and she enjoyed having people in the palm of her hand. She loved it when they became mesmerized with her, and she loved it when they embarrassed themselves or revealed the ugliness of their character. She never denied that she was a bewitching woman. This was just how aloof and heartless one she was. Who told her to be so beautiful and bewitching? Her beauty allowed her to do anything she wanted. However, Ling Han actually dared to feel impatient before her? This was a slap to her face. If this impatience had been on Ling Han's face, she could say with certainty that he was doing it on purpose. He was playing hard to get. If that were the case, he could be regarded as an experienced womanizer. However, there was an expression of calm on Ling Han's face. Meanwhile, that look of impatience was coming from his eyes. This led her to believe that he was truly impatient with her. Eyes didn't tell lies. Moreover, Lin Yuqi was a woman who had great experience in toying with men. He wasn't having any improper thoughts about her, and she could easily detect this fact. She was extremely ticked off. Lin Yuqi calmed herself down. How could a bewitching beauty like her fail in seducing a small youth? She flashed him a beautiful smile. This was a mesmerizing smile that could melt even hardened steel. "Must I have a reason to invite young Master Ling?" she asked lazily. It was as if her voice had little hands that tickled him softly, trying to arouse his flames of lust. Ling Han shook his head and said, "If there's nothing you want to say, then please excuse me for taking my leave." He stood up and turned around to leave. "Oi! Oi!" Lin Yuqi was genuinely about to explode in anger. She dashed forward at an incredible speed and blocked Ling Han's path. Ling Han's expression suddenly became serious. This breathtaking and seemingly provocative woman was actually an elite. In fact, he hadn't even seen her movements clearly. It was extremely likely that if she had suddenly attacked him, he would have been hit. However, her voluptuous breasts were right before him, almost about to touch him. Ling Han frowned, and had no option but to take a step back. He already had enough lovers, and he naturally wouldn't dump any of them. So, he definitely didn't want to take any new partners. Lin Yuqi squinted her eyes upon seeing this. Her eyes were each like a slit at this moment, yet they were still enough to capture any man in the world. She laughed in a silvery voice before asking softly, "What are you afraid of? Are you scared that I'll bite?" Holius H*T. Ling Han nodded seriously and said, "Madam, please watch yourself." Lin Yuqi let out a long and silvery laugh. Her breasts shook as she laughed, and they made one want to transform into a beast and leap onto her so that they could personally experience the size and sensation of her breasts. People all say that a concubine is better than a wife, and a lover is better than a concubine one. Hee hee, want to experience someone else's wife? She murmured softly. Her voice was dripping with temptation. Brat, submit to my charm. Once you show any sign of affirmation, see how I beat you to death. I'll then make you my slave, and have you become a coolie forever. Humph, that's the price for daring to lust over me. Ling Han smiled and said, Madam, you've had too much to drink. You're really quite drunk. All right, I've got no time for such games. If you don't allow me to leave, I'll have no option but to destroy your carriage. Lin Yuqi was astounded. This man had rejected her yet again. Woo! She suddenly sat down in sorrow and started to sob. What are you playing at now? I didn't touch a single hair of yours, so why are you acting like someone harassed you? The less time I spend with this woman the better. Time to leave. Ling Han was just about to leave, yet there was suddenly a blur in front of his eyes. Lin Yuqi, who had been squatting on the floor and sobbing just then, had blocked his path again. The strength of this woman was truly profound. Ling Han hadn't noticed her movement at all. You're bullying me. Lin Yuqi sobbed. However, she was a seductive beauty to begin with, so her sobbing simply made people feel she was extremely pitiful. They would more so feel an intense urge to leap over and conquer her. This kind of high and mighty noblewoman can best stimulate men's desire to destroy and conquest. Men will yearn to rip her clothes off and make her kneel under their fa. Ling Han grimaced as he suddenly came to his senses. This woman was far too enchanting. She had made his thoughts wander so far. He hurriedly thought about Empress Luan Xing. Once her stunning appearance appeared in his mind, Lin Yuqi instantly lost her charm and luster. She appeared especially ordinary now, and nothing she did could make him feel aroused. The Empress can actually be used as a mind-purifying medicine. This is brilliant. Lin Yuqi clicked her tongue in wonder. I've already pulled out all my tricks, yet you actually seem disgusted. She was truly stumped at this moment. Could it be that she actually had to strip? She was merely playing with men's emotions. However, she had no desire to sacrifice herself for such games. Young Master Ling, please sit, she said with a serious expression. Was there still any trace of tears on her seductively beautiful face? Ling Han was almost driven mad. Are we that familiar with each other? Is it really all right for you to play around like that? However, the strength of this woman was truly profound. If she insisted on making him stay, there was no way that Ling Han could leave, unless he used his Black Tower. However, Ling Han had become more cautious after learning about the Celestial Realm, and he more so didn't want to expose the secret of his Black Tower. What kind of existence was the Black Tower? The reincarnation tree needed 12 trillion years to mature in the outside world, yet this exorbitant amount of time was cut down to 3 years in the Black Tower. Although the reincarnation tree's effects hadn't reached its peak yet, it was still extremely heaven-defying. This would probably be a precious treasure even in the celestial realm, right? However, he still had yet to reach the Genesis tier. So, wouldn't he be seeking death if he allowed beings of the celestial realm to find out about his Black Tower? Chapter 1235. Guest Elder. What can I do for you, madam? Ling Han asked in a deep voice. He did not even know who she was at this point. Lin Yuqi smiled beautifully, and answered, I am the shopkeeper of the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Ling Han was a little curious. Such a bewitching vixen whose abilities were unfathomable was actually the shopkeeper of a pharmacy? He mocked her internally, yet showed nothing in his expression and said, So it is shopkeeper Lin. Tisk, TSK, I do not like this form of address. Lin Yuqi shook her head, and sat down in an incredibly graceful position. Then, she crossed her legs, and rose up a long leg from the high slit in her skirt. It was slender, delicate, and as fair as ivory. Because the inside of this carriage was furnished very lavishly, and a thick fur carpet was laid out on the floor, she did not even wear any shoes, and showed off one of her beautiful feet. Her 5 delicate toenails were painted bright red, contrasting sharply with the fairness of her beautiful foot. If it was someone with some unique fetish, they would definitely want to kneel down and lick that foot. What was more fatal was that she was even lightly waving her leg, and the waves of fragrance spreading out from her caused one's eyes to involuntarily sneak into her skirt, wanting to see even more of the beautiful scenery. Unfortunately, they would only be able to see a little bit of a fair thigh. "Why don't you call me big sister?" Lin Yuqi pursed her lips over a finger, her teeth as white as snow and her eyes hazy, causing one to be drunk on her charm. "Madam Lin." Ling Han was unmoved. Big sister Lin would work too. Lin Yuqi possessed an indomitable tenacity. "Madam Lin," Ling Han insisted. Lin Yuqi couldn't help but sigh. She had really never seen a man like this, being so cold and apathetic, which filled her with some curiosity. She knew that when a woman began to be curious about a man, it was a dangerous signal, and it was very possible that she would be lost because of that. However, she was confident that she would definitely be able to control herself, causing him to be lost in her charms instead. "Fine then." Lin Yuqi finally made no further insistence on the address. "Does little brother Han know how much trouble you would attract after successfully concocting the berserk blood spirit pill?" A muscle twitched in Ling Han's cheek. This woman had not compromised in the least. What did she mean by fine? She no longer requested him to call her big sister, yet addressed him as little brother Han. Wasn't it the same? He couldn't bother to argue the point with her, as that would only get them further and further off topic. Furthermore, this woman was obviously an expert at bringing the conversation off topic, so he could not allow her to mislead him. "What kind of trouble?" he asked. "The berserk blood spirit pill can boost up a sun-moon tier by a sub-minor level, and has been called the holy pill of the sun-moon tier. As long as they have not reached the peak stage of the consummate level of sun-moon tier, they would definitely target little brother Han," Lin Yuqi said sweetly, displaying her enchantment and seductiveness in front of Ling Han without the slightest care. Ling Han smiled and asked, "Since that is the case, then wouldn't those sun-moon tiers be polite to me, and treat me as a respected guest?" Lin Yuqi laughed loudly with abandon, once more allowing Ling Han's eyes to fully enjoy the beautiful sight of her heaving curves. She shook her head and asked, "Little brother Han does not have any background, and the Han Lin Pavilion is only a small place, so how could it possibly intimidate them enough? Once the news spreads out, it won't take too long, and little brother Han should soon be captured and forced to concoct alchemical pills all day." Hee, little brother Han doesn't think that just because alchemists have outstanding status, they would be able to go anywhere in this world, right? Of course not. The reason why alchemists had outstanding status was because the cultivators had need of them. Since this status had been given to them by cultivators, whether they recognize this kind of lofty status would also have to depend on the mood of the cultivators. An alchemist without any background to support him was really only a tool that could be used to concoct alchemical pills. Ling Han smiled and asked, "Then what does Madam suggest?" "Join the Treasure Forest Pavilion," Lin Yuqi said, her face suddenly serious. Previously, she had looked so seductive, looking like she wanted to entrance him to death, but then she suddenly became so formal, and was incredibly serious. This kind of difference was too big, and Ling Han was slightly unable to accept it. Ling Han shook his head and said, "Though the Treasure Forest Pavilion is a powerful force, and can reach the higher-ups, I cannot possibly leave the Han Lin Pavilion." Lin Yuqi broke into an entrancing smile again and said, "I did not request that little brother Han leaves the Han Lin Pavilion. Since little brother Han can become the senior elder of the Han Lin Pavilion, why can you not multitask and be a guest elder of the Treasure Forest Pavilion as well?" Ling Han was surprised. This was indeed a big gift. The Treasure Forest Pavilion was indeed a massive entity. Its branches spread all over the Cloud Apex planet. Even the Crimson Flames Emperor had to give them some face. Then with this seal of protection, what other sun-moon tier would dare touch a single hair on Ling Han's head? However, it was not that Ling Han was worried that a powerful force would truly capture him and force him to keep concocting alchemical pills, but rather thought of the 5 sects. The 5 sects managed to survive for so many years in the immortal realm, and had refined the lower realm into the realm pill so many times. How could it be that there was really no one who knew about in the whole immortal realm? Behind them, there might be an even stronger force that was covering for them. If Ling Han was all by himself, then after he clashed against the 5 sects, and the latter was no match for him, they would definitely seek help from the force supporting them. However, if Ling Han also drew out the seal of protection from the Treasure Forest Pavilion, then would the force behind the 5 sects still dare move? Even if the 5 sects did not have such a force to support them, they would also have some kind of allies, wouldn't they? The treasure forest pavilion was sufficient to intimidate these people, and force them to stay out of this matter. Not bad, not bad. This identity was very useful. Thinking so, Ling Han nodded and answered, "Then I shall gladly accept." "Thank you, madam." Lin Yuqi smiled sweetly, then raised a single finger, and said, "However, I have one condition." Ling Han nodded. She naturally would not do him a big favor like this for no reason, so it was very natural that she would have conditions. He asked, "What condition?" If it was nothing too demanding, he would agree. However, if she wanted him to surrender himself, that was absolutely impossible. This condition of Lin Yuqi's was not the slightest bit XXX. Choose either condition. 1. Concoct a berserk blood spirit pill for me every 10 years, or 2. Teach the method of concoction to that girl, Xinyan. These 2 conditions could really not be considered simple. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then asked, "Madam can get hold of the fruits of the Red Rain Divine King tree?" This was the crucial ingredient for concocting the berserk blood spirit pill. Without this main ingredient, all other ingredients would be wasted. "If I couldn't, how would I possibly dare to offer such a condition?" Lin Yuqi asked, filled with confidence. Ling Han nodded slightly and then said, "Fine. I shall teach the method of concoction to Miss Han." In the case of the first condition, he would have to be tied to the Treasure Forest Pavilion for his whole life, so it would be best that he chose the second. Though teaching another to concoct an alchemical pill would require a very long period of time, it would get things done once and for all. Moreover, he only had to copy down the pill recipe and pass it to Han Xinyan, and when she had more or less grasped it, he would take out a bit of time to guide her along. To him, the time spent would not be very long. Yet Lin Yuqi was slightly disappointed. Ling Han's answer had once again proved that her charms were ineffective, or he should have chosen the first condition. Then, wouldn't he be able to see her a few more times? "This damn brat, I don't believe that you won't fall for me." Chapter 1236. Where is the beauty? Finally, Lin Yuqi allowed Ling Han to get off the carriage. She didn't need to rush the temptation. Fuck! However, when Ling Han had alighted from the carriage, he couldn't help but shout a curse loudly. When he had been conversing with Lin Yuqi, he didn't know where the carriage had carried him off to. The place he alighted in was actually a dense forest, and he couldn't spot any signs of the city at all. Women were indeed petty. That azure-robed maidservant obviously bore a secret grudge against him, and had thus steered the carriage to who knew where, then tossed him out. Wasn't this a deliberate trap for him? He shook his head, and jumped onto the tip of a tree. After observing for a while, he first headed in a specific direction. When he came to a small town, after making some inquiries, he finally found out that this place was actually more than 800 miles away from Big Trade City. That carriage was really quite fast. They didn't seem to have been traveling all that long, did they? Ling Han decided to simply not return to Big Trade City. In any case, his aim was Water Element Valley, and coincidentally, after he left Big Trade City, he just happened to have to travel in this direction too. Hence, not only was he not lost, he had instead gotten a free ride. If the azure-robed woman found out, wouldn't she explode in fury? Ling Han laughed, and set off. After only 2 days, Ling Han had arrived at the Water Element Valley. According to the information provided by Kong Xiao Yuan and Yun Yong Wang, he arrived at a place in the valley. There was a steep waterfall in this place, and it was covered by peaceful flowers. There was also a small courtyard, and it was like a hidden place of peace and serenity. This was where the heavenly phoenix divine maiden lived in seclusion. Ling Han couldn't help but feel excited. He strode towards the courtyard as he thought of what he would first say when he saw the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. As his thoughts danced, he arrived in front of the main doors. He raised his hand, and was just about to knock when he slightly started as a powerful feeling of anxiety suddenly rose up in his heart. However, he merely paused, and still continued the action of knocking. Knock, knock, knock. After a while, the sound of footsteps was heard from within. Yet Ling Han's brow was slightly creased. That was because these footsteps were not just one person's, but rather 3's, and they were very jumbled up. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was living in seclusion on her own, So how could there be 3 pairs of footsteps? This was not normal. Instantly, his eyes froze over, and a powerful killing intent rose up in him. If anyone dared harm the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, he would truly commit a massacre without the slightest hesitation. The wooden doors opened, and 3 people appeared at the doorway. They were all men, and were clad in battle armor. It was clear that these suits of armor were slightly old and worn, and there were signs of blood on them as well, exuding an air of aggression and martial force. Furthermore, these 3 men looked to be in their 30s, and wore serious expressions, with an air of unswerving determination characteristic of soldiers. "Who are you?" a man asked, with an arrogance that came from one with a high social position. This man should be a high-ranking military officer in the army, which was why he behaved like general, looking down on a foot soldier from the moment he spoke, a powerful forcefulness in his tone. Ling Han was unmoved and merely asked calmly, "And who are you people? How dare you?" The other 2 men drew part of the sabers at their waists simultaneously. Jiang, a crisp sound was heard, bringing a frightening air of violence with them. That was definitely a violent aura that could only be born from years of experience on the battlefield. The man in the center stretched out a hand and pressed down, preventing the other 2 from taking any further action. Then he turned to Ling Han and said, "I am the left vanguard subordinate to Great General Xie, Ma Zhang. Who are you? Speak your name." "Great General Xie? Left vanguard." Ling Han was surprised. He knew that these 3 people were all soldiers, but what he did not understand was how had the heavenly phoenix divine maiden gotten involved with the army. If that wasn't the case, then why would these 3 people have appeared here? He paused for a moment and then said, "I am Ling Han, and have come here to seek an old friend. May I know what Lord Ma has come here for?" "Humph, even you dare to mind the business of others?" one soldier rebuked, though he did not draw his saber this time. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "This is not the battlefield, so there is no need to use the same attitude that you adopt in the army. Humph, the heavenly phoenix maiden has disappeared. Since you call yourself her old friend, we can just ask you, where has she gone?" Ma Zhang stared at Ling Han, an astonishing killing intent exuding from his eyes, looking like he would be drawing his saber at the slightest disagreement. The heavenly phoenix maiden had disappeared. Ling Han's heart clenched. And why were these 3 people so determined to seek the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and whose command were they under? His expression turned cold as well. This was his reverse scale, which he could not allow others to touch. "I would like to know as well. Why are you people looking for my friend?" he uttered darkly. "Subdue him." Ma Zhang did not answer, and directly commanded his subordinates to move. Shua, shua, the 2 soldiers instantly raced out. They were definitely not ordinary soldiers. Otherwise, how could they possibly be in the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier? When they made their moves, the powerful force of the Sun-Moon tier spread out, which was incredibly shocking. Yet Ling Han could not even bother himself to parry. He merely gave a humph, and a sliver of heaven's might channeled out. Instantly, the 2 gave a muffled grunt, and couldn't even manage to keep hold of their sabers. With a clink, the sabers fell onto the ground, and the 2 men directly flopped onto the ground. They couldn't help but be shocked. Ling Han was only in the low extreme as well. Moreover, he was only in the early stage, yet they couldn't even manage to use a single move in front of him. This gap was too overwhelmingly big. Ma Zhang's eyes suddenly exploded with an astonishing fighting spirit. Ling Han's abilities had provoked him, making him feel as if he had returned to the battlefield and encountered a frightening opponent. "Why are you seeking the heavenly phoenix maiden?" Ling Han asked again. This time, he did not hide his abilities in the slightest. A frightening aura rolled out as if a king had descended. "Brat, you are too arrogant." Ma Zhang humphed, drew out his saber, and charged out. Shua, bright light exploded, and shot out towards Ling Han. Ling Han clenched his fist, and greeted the incoming saber light with a punch. Pong! When his fist landed on the saber light, an incredible light exploded. Pong! 2 soldiers were instantly sent flying, and underneath the massive wave of power, the doors to the courtyard were also destroyed in a single instant. Ling Han was enraged and exclaimed, "Bastard, you actually dare destroy this place." He raised his fists and threw a series of consecutive punches that landed on Ma Zhang. Ma Zhang was both furious and shocked. He wasn't the only one who was causing fuck damage in this place. Okay? Didn't Ling Han move as well? And he actually dared to blame him. This was really a case of a monk insulting a bald man. Still, this brat was practically a freak. He was obviously only in the early stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so how could his battle prowess not be inferior to his in the least? It should be known that he himself was in the peak stage of the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, and his power was much stronger than Ling Han's. It was just that the latter actually had a frightening intimidation, causing him to keep performing abnormally, unable to fully exhibit his power, and he could only bring things to a draw. This was too shocking. When did such a young king tier appear in the Imperial Empire? Lose! He called out loudly as he brandished his saber in a series of mad blows. He was a soldier that had years of experience in the battlefield, and the thing he lacked the least was fighting spirit. Humph! Ling Han threw one punch after another, which landed madly on Ma Zhang. Pang pang pang. The two were engaged in a fierce battle. One had stronger power, but the other possessed a sliver of heaven's might, and the victor was actually undecided. However, this courtyard naturally became very unfortunate, shattered into bits by the push and pull of power, and had completely turned into ruins. Chapter 1237. Whereabouts of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. After battling for quite a while, Ling Han and Ma Zhang stopped fighting at the same time. Neither of them had been serious, and they were wary of each other as well. Who knew what trump cards the other had up his sleeve? Brat, we will meet again. Ma Zhang brought the two soldiers with him and turned to leave. Of course we will meet again. You still have to rebuild this courtyard for me. Ling Han called out behind him. Ma Zhang almost stumbled. This brat was really keeping this in his mind constantly. Fuck, it wasn't just him at fault here. Ling Han watched the other party leave, and did not pursue. Obviously, he had also missed his aim, and did not know where the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was. This was the reason why Ling Han had not continued to fight with him. Furthermore, he already knew who he was. In any case, he a subordinate of Great General Xie. Great General Xie? It should be Xie Qian, one of the 4 great generals of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. Rumor had it that he was an elite of the Eternal River tier, but his exact cultivation level was unknown. If this kind of elite did not choose to reveal it himself, who would be able to estimate his cultivation level? Since that was the case, he could run, but he couldn't hide. Ling Han turned around. Perhaps Kong Xiao Yuan and Yun Yong Wang would know where the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had gone, or perhaps she might have even gone to the Hanlin Pavilion, and he had just missed her. 2 days later, he came back to Big Trade City. Master! Master! Once Kong Xiao Yuan saw him, he immediately called out to him, his expression filled with nervousness and panic. What is it? Ling Han asked. A letter from Mistress. Kong Xiao Yuan handed a letter over. Ling Han's heart was filled with worry in the first place, so he hurriedly snatched the letter. As his eyes swept over the letter, he soon found out the gist of the story. The matter was actually very simple. The Cloud Phoenix sect expressed the intention to develop relations with Great General Xie to increase their status. But as a powerful elite of the Eternal River tier, who would take note of a force that was only of the Sun-Moon tier? Then, since they could not develop relations with the Great General Xie directly, they could only do so in a more roundabout way. They sought out the 7th grandchild of the Great General Xie, Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai was an extremely outstanding young man among the younger generation of the Xie clan. He had only cultivated for about 100,000 years, and he was already at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and now had some say in the Xie clan. If he could break through to Heavenly Body tier as well, he would definitely become an influential person in the Xie clan. Thus, the Cloud Phoenix sect wanted to form an alliance by marriage with the Xie clan, and the other party was this Prince Xie. Xie Donglai came on their invitation, and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was also tricked into coming by her sect. As a result, Xie Donglai took a fancy to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden with a single look, and after returning to the imperial capital, sent a messenger to deliver the message that he wished to take the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden as a concubine not many days later. For a crucial heir like him, the choice of the candidate for main wife naturally would not be his decision to make. It would rather be used to secure an ally that could be of aid to the Xie clan through marriage. For example, a loyal subordinate, or a state official of equal authority. Thus, the small Cloud Phoenix sex member naturally could not possibly be a candidate for main wife, but at least she would be married officially as a concubine, which guaranteed quite a high status as well. From the perspective of the Cloud Phoenix sect, this was a step up the social ladder. The Cloud Phoenix sect naturally agreed happily, but how could the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden be willing? She called herself the Ling family's widow, and that was her stand and a kind of determination. However, though she presently had the abilities to stand against the Cloud Phoenix sect, compared with a colossal entity like the Xie clan, she was indescribably weak. Hence, she decided to go to the two-realm battlefield. Only that was a place the power of the Xie clan was unable to reach. When Kong Xiao Yuan received the letter, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden should have already reached the two-realm battlefield. Ling Han was furious. They actually wanted to force his wife to remarry. Wasn't this cuckolding him? This Cloud Phoenix sect was really worthless, forcing an honest girl into prostitution for their own benefit. That Xie Donglai dared to try and snatch his wife. If he didn't castrate him 10 times, it would not be enough to vent his fury. I plan to immediately go to the two-realm battlefield. Ling Han decided promptly. The two-realm battlefield was really a slaughterhouse of life. Every year, every month, or even every day, the number of people who battled to the death there were uncountable. Though the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's bloodline was strong, and she had also reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, in the two-realm battlefield, her abilities were really insufficient. If the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden suffered the slightest injury, he would definitely come back and skin Xie Donglai. As for the Cloud Phoenix sect, needless to say, its fate would be destruction by his hand anyway. Master, we shall go as well. Kong Xiao Yuan and Yun Yong Wang hurriedly proclaimed. Ling Han shook his head and said, "The two of you aren't warriors, so why are you joining in on the excitement? Concoct alchemical pills obediently, and if the two of you have not yet advanced to become level 6 alchemists when I return, just wait to be beaten." Ah! The two cried out desperately. It would need at least a few millennia of accumulation to advance from level 5 to level 6. They were still a far way off. Ling Han did not care. Now that the conflict between the Han Lin Pavilion and Treasure Forest Pavilion had been resolved, his presence was no longer important. However, he had to be true to his word. He decided to first make a trip to the Treasure Forest Pavilion and teach the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill to Han Xinyan, and then head out to the two-realm battlefield. In any case, it was just a short trip. Yun Yong Wang and Kong Xiao Yuan naturally backed Ling Han's idea to find the mistress. They both nodded. On one hand, they had to protect the Han Lin Pavilion and complete Ling Han's Mishianto by as much level 5 godly metal as possible, and on the other, they had to work hard on their alchemy skills so that they could advance to become level 6 alchemists. Ling Han set out all by himself, and did not alert his two brothers. He did not bring his disciple, Ding Ping, either. He even abandoned his 4 followers in Big Trade City. The two-realm battlefield was really too dangerous. Only the Azura Demon Emperor and Old Ginseng were still left in the Black Tower. To others, the Black Tower did not have spiritual qi, so it was not a suitable place for cultivation, and it only had the reincarnation tree to aid the comprehension of Tao. But for Old Ginseng, it was different because he himself was a Tao cultivated from a godly medicine of heaven and earth, and the Black Tower had the ability to speed up the growth of plants. For him, though it was not as exaggerated as that, its benefits were still quite big. Thus, he liked to stay in the Black Tower to absorb that kind of power when he had nothing else to do. Moreover, he liked to root himself under the reincarnation tree, and could comprehend Tao while he was at it. His improvement was very fast, and he looked just about ready to advance into the Sun-Moon tier. Of course, if you wanted Old Ginseng to focus and work hard on cultivation, that was impossible. He would frequently come out and tease girls and women in Big Trade City. As long as they were the slightest bit beautiful, practically none had managed to escape from Old Ginseng's demonic claws. Ling Han soon arrived at the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Lin Yuqi had obviously made arrangements for him. The moment he appeared, the staff in the shop immediately greeted him respectfully as Elder Ling, and were incredibly reverent. "Yo, have you missed me?" Lin Yuqi walked in a waft of fragrance, directly forcing her way to stand right in front of Ling Han. Her proud breasts only 1 or 2 inches away from Ling Han at most. Ling Han looked at anywhere but her and said, "I have come to look for Han Xinyan to teach her the pill recipe of the Berserk Blood Spirit pill." Lin Yuqi couldn't help but get irritated. In Ling Han's eyes, couldn't she even compare that inexperienced, flat-chested little girl? Calm down. Calm down. She advised herself, then waved a hand, and had someone bring Ling Han to find Han Xinyan as she scrambled her brains. How would she be able to enlighten a blockhead? The difficulty was huge. Led by a maidservant, Ling Han entered into a backyard. This was obviously private territory, and only multiple beautiful maidservants would occasionally appear, with no further signs of any outsiders. Chapter 1238. Two-Realm Battlefield. Miss Han is Madam's distant relative. The young maid leading Ling Han in had a very gossipy nature, and unendingly talked about Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan. In short, the two women had a very close relationship, or Han Xinyan would not have come to such a small city for no reason. When she had brought Ling Han to a courtyard, the maid curtsied and said, "Miss Han should be presently meditating inside. I do not dare disturb her, so it would be better if you yourself knock on the door, young master." As she said so, she turned around and left. This was really irresponsible. Ling Han knocked on the doors. Knock, knock, knock. After a while, he heard footsteps. Squeak, the doors were opened, revealing an almost naked person. It was Han Xinyan. Fuck, even she wanted to tempt him. Ah! Han Xinyan suddenly released a sharp shriek. Bang! The doors immediately closed again. Ling Han rubbed his nose. He had almost been hit by the doors when they closed. After only a short while, the doors were opened once more, and Han Xinyan was aggressively rushing out. This time she had naturally dressed herself, her hand wielding a sword, and she slashed out at Ling Han. "How dare you, you shameless be asterisk 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 asterisk." Ling Han hurriedly dodged. Though this woman was indeed outstandingly talented in alchemy, in martial arts, she did not have corresponding abilities. Ling Han merely sent out the heaven's might in a slight wave, and her body weakened. How could she possibly have the ability to attack further? Do not misunderstand. I have just come to teach you the method of concoction for the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, he said, smiling. Han Xinyan paused, delivered a few more slashes, and only then withdrew her long sword regretfully. She rebuked, "Be asterisk 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 asterisk." Ling Han sighed and said, "I didn't do anything to you, right? I was just normally knocking on the door, and you were the one who came out completely undressed." Han Xinyan couldn't help but flush. She had a bad habit, and that was that she liked to remove all her clothing when she was studying a pill recipe. Only then would she have inspiration. Moreover, this was the internal courtyard of Lin Yuqi, where there was not one man. Hence, she naturally had no fear that she would be exposing her nakedness. But who'd have known that a man would have appeared all of a sudden like this, and seen her completely? This was so humiliating. She glared fiercely at Ling Han and said, "This matter, never speak of it again." She was not an unreasonable person, and knew that the fault did not lie with Ling Han. Yet, she was still extremely displeased internally. A woman with small breasts would also have little tolerance. Ling Han thought. This woman was really flat-chested. In truth, even when she had undressed completely, he had not seen much. If it was merely looking at her breasts, she could absolutely disguise herself as a man. All right. He went with the flow, and also feared that she would hang on to him, saying something along the lines of him having seen her completely exposed, so she could marry no one but him. He directly threw out a book and said, "This is the pill recipe of the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill. You can study it on your own first. I have some matters to handle, so I have to leave Big Trade City for a while. If you have anything you do not understand, you can note it all down, and ask me when I return." Han Xinyan was irritated. They were both level 8 alchemists, yet he looked like he was teaching her. Did he think of her as a junior? But now that she had obtained the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, she couldn't bring herself to become hostile with Ling Han. She could only store away the pill recipe in much displeasure. At this time, she really dared not declare stubbornly that she refused to accept the pill recipe. Ling Han waved a hand, and left for the two-realm battlefield. He set out to the frontier grounds of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. That was where the two-realm battlefield was located. The Netherworld and the Immortal Realm had one similarity in this place. The Netherworld could invade the Immortal Realm through this place, while the Immortal Realm could also enter the Netherworld from here. The cloud-piercing shuttle was no longer suitable for traveling around one planet. Thankfully, Ling Han had already grasped the star-plucking step, and added with the lightning technique he had cultivated from studying the heavenly tribulation, his present speed was extremely amazing. In a mere 20 days, he had already reached the two-realm battlefield. Before he had set out, he had first refined a berserk blood spirit pill. He had spent a whole 3 days to digest the medicinal effects completely, and the red sun within his body suddenly doubled in size, allowing him to advance into the middle stage of the low extreme. Why was this kind of alchemical pill called berserk? Because the medicinal effects were indeed berserk. Even if Ling Han's physique had reached the extent of level 6 godly metal, the force had still caused lacerations on his flesh, and he had even broken a few of his godly bones. No wonder that if they weren't in the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, other Sun-Moon tier cultivators had to take this medicine only under the care of other elites. Otherwise, they would only explode from the berserk medicinal effects. If they had died from merely taking an alchemical pill, that would have been too much of a waste. After taking the pill, with Ling Han's sensitivity as the Alchemy Emperor, he discovered that there was alchemic poison left within his body. If he took another berserk blood spirit pill, then not only could it not possibly produce the effect of increasing his cultivation level, it would instead cause him to die of poison. What kind of concept was one berserk blood spirit pill? It would boost a Sun-Moon tier by a sub-minor level. What kind of damage would that produce if it exploded? It was practically equivalent to a full power blow from a heavenly body tier. What kind of Sun-Moon tier would be able to endure such poison? Ling Han had no solution for it. He kept observing the dispersion rate of the alchemic poison, and came to a conclusion. This was probably going to take as long as 3 years. This also meant that if he did not have any special means to resolve the alchemic poison in his body, he would have to wait 3 years before he could take a second berserk blood spirit pill. But just think, that meant it would help him reach the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier in 50 years at most. What a terrifying improvement rate this was. How long was the lifespan of a Sun-Moon tier? They would have 4 million years to live at consummate level. A whole 4 million years could be cultivated within 50 years. Wasn't that terrifying enough, and wasn't that fast enough? Of course, it could not be compared to Hunyo's speed. The overall level of cultivation of the Celestial Realm was even higher, producing Genesis tier cultivators like the Immortal Realm produced Shattering Void tiers. It could not be claimed to be easily done, but it probably wasn't all that difficult, either. On the Immortal Realm side of the two-realm battlefield, a bridgehead stronghold had been established, and its name was Wolffang City. The Wolffang City existed to provide a resting place for the soldiers fighting with the Netherworld, a kind of sanctuary, and at the same time, also a stronghold. Once Wolffang City was conquered, the armies of the Netherworld would march unchallenged and wreck the entire Cloud Apex planet. There were only 2 imperial empires on the Cloud Apex planet: the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. Thus, the main forces here naturally comprised of the armies from the 2 great imperial empires. Aside from them, all cultivators and demonic beasts that had reached the immortal level were duty-bound to join the two-realm battlefield. There were a few well-known troops here, like the Purple Moon Army under the Purple Moon Divine Maiden, the Wind Riders Army under the Wind Rider Divine King, and the Holy Army under the Wide Travel Monk King. These troops had all established their reputation for being firm and powerful in the Great War between the Netherworld and the Immortal World. When they came to the two-realm battlefield, a cultivator could freely choose one out of 2 options. Firstly, he could join an official army and join the war as a soldier, and when he had accumulated enough merit points, he could retire from the army with glory. Secondly, he could also act alone and hunt down the beings from the Netherworld. Chapter 1239. Lord Rabbit. Usually 100,000 years after breaking through to the Mountain River tier, one would have to join the two-realm battlefield. However, some people were prodigies who might have advanced into the Sun-Moon tier after 30,000 to 40,000 years. Hence, there was a rule that those who had advanced into the Sun-Moon tier had to enlist in the army to resist the enemy forces within 1 million years of their breakthrough. What about those that were slightly more genius and had advanced into the heavenly body tier within 1 million years after that? Then they would have to join the army within 10 million years from then. In short, you had to perform your military service unless your abilities were strong enough to oppose the two great empires. This time limit was meant to give geniuses a long enough time for them to develop and grow to avoid them dying needlessly on the two-realm battlefield. The most useful item on the two-realm battlefield was merit points. How was one to retire from military service? By depending on merit points. Mountain river tiers needed 100 merit points, sun-moon tiers needed 10,000, whereas heavenly body tiers needed 1 million, and eternal river tiers required a frightening 100 million. Why was there such a large gap? The reason was very simple. Cultivators at different cultivation levels obtained merit points at completely different difficulty levels. For example, killing a netherworld being in the low extreme of the mountain river tier would only earn 1 point, and the medium extreme was worth 5 points, the high extreme was 10 points, and the consummate level was 20. Theoretically, a mountain river tier needed only kill 5 netherworld beings at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and he could retire successfully. And once it had reached the sun-moon tier, the low extreme would be able to provide 100 merit points. Additionally, the two-realm battlefield naturally would not allow people to take advantage of the crisis for their personal gain. If they did not earn any merit points even after a long time, they would receive a corresponding punishment. When Ling Han found out about this, he made a deduction inside his head. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden had joined the two-realm battlefield so early for only one purpose: avoiding the Xie clan. Hence, she had to have joined an official army. Otherwise, if she was a traveling warrior, the moment she encountered someone from the Xie clan, she would not be able to avoid the fate of being taken back by force. Then, which army would she have joined? The Purple Moon Army. It was very simple. Aside from the Purple Moon Army, all the other armies were mainly comprised of males. In the cultivation world, it was natural that there would be more male cultivators, and the male-to-female ratio was not just slightly big. Hence, on the two-realm battlefield, there were very few females, and armies would naturally comprise mainly males. Only the Purple Moon Army was a completely female army because the leader was a powerful woman. Ling Han made some investigating. Men were not qualified to join the Purple Moon Army, as they only accepted females. Furthermore, to prevent harassment, the Purple Moon Army also strictly forbade men from entering into their camp. Any who broke this rule would be castrated at best and killed at worst. Hence, Ling Han definitely would not rashly run into the Purple Moon Army and say that he was looking for his wife. Then, it would either be that the heavenly phoenix divine maiden would really become the Ling family's widow, or she would become a grass widow one. He decided to stand guard outside the camp of the Purple Moon Army. When they moved out, he would follow suit, find the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and then talk to her. However, even if he managed to talk to her, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden could not possibly leave with him immediately. After killing a netherworld being, he'd store the body in his spatial spirit tool, and then bring it back to Wolf Fong City. There would naturally be someone there to check his battle results, and record down his merit points. This method's nature also caused some people to walk off the beaten track, robbing others to snatch their spatial spirit tools, sometimes even killing them to silence them. There would be scum anywhere, Ling Han thought. He came to 100 miles away from where the Purple Moon Army camped, and sat down all alone, waiting quietly for the Purple Moon Army to mobilize. The conditions here were very poor. There was a shortage of spiritual qi, and also a sinister feeling about the place. Furthermore, the regulations of the Great Tao had also become extremely weak. Ling Han had tried it out. He was just barely capable of flight. It should be known that the ability to fly in the immortal realm would come with the cultivation level of the heavenly body tier. The two realms conflicted with each other, and even the regulations of the heaven and earth were affected. If even this place was like this, then what about further ahead? The contact point between Netherworld and the immortal realm was 10,000 miles away, and the further ahead one went, the bigger the effects would naturally be. Ling Han switched locations, yet discovered that the regulations here had become extraordinarily strong. Even the height he could jump for was far below the normal. What more flight? It looked like not only would the regulations of the heaven and earth here be weakened, they would also become unbalanced. In some places the suppression had become smaller, and in some places it had become larger. Then, if one was unaccustomed to this kind of change, and traveled here, he would be greatly affected. If he was the slightest bit careless, he might crash into something. And in battle, these effects were naturally even stronger. Brat, what is this place? Old Ginseng came out of the Black Tower for a breath of fresh air. But once he saw this place, he paled involuntarily. You, what kind of crazy place have you brought Grandpa Ginseng to? This place looked inauspicious at the first glance. Ahead of them, there were strange demonic clouds dancing, exuding an air of evil. Why had they come here for no reason? Brat, you are insane! The old Ginseng exclaimed, pointing at Ling Han. Ling Han was not angry and merely said calmly, "Looks like I have to call Hunyo over and cook a large pot of old ginseng soup." The old Ginseng immediately paled. He was really scared of that little girl. She was definitely an authentic glutton, and would eat anything. He hurriedly smiled in an obsequious way and said, "Brat, what kind of relationship do we have? If there are girls, we can chase them together. We are brothers, so there is no need for civilities between us." Ling Han only scoffed, causing the old Ginseng to step to one side sheepishly. Ling Han simply summoned out the Azura Demon Emperor as well. However, that puppet had lost one arm, causing major loss of the formation patterns that were engraved within, leading to a great drop in its battle prowess. But that was fine. Ling Han had also advanced into the Sun-Moon tier, and did not need that kind of battle prowess anymore. What he needed was the understanding the Azura Demon Emperor had regarding the Netherworld. The more he knew about the matters of the Netherworld, the higher chances of victory he would have when opposing Netherworld beings in future. Furthermore, if he wanted to break into the Celestial Realm, he would have to grasp both the powers of creating and destroying a world. Ling Han would have to enter into the Netherworld to comprehend the regulations of heaven and earth of the Netherworld as well. Only then did the old Ginseng know what kind of place this was. Moreover, he could also escape through the ground. Even a heavenly body tier might not be capable of capturing him. Meanwhile, Ling Han listened to the Azura Demon Emperor speak of the information regarding the Netherworld. However, the Azura Demon Emperor was only a being at the lowest level of the Netherworld, so his knowledge was lacking. Especially regarding the level of the Demon Master, he was practically a complete blank. "Help! Brat! Come quick and save Grandfather Ginseng." 3 days later, he heard the old Ginseng scream loudly, hollering for help through his divine sense. The transmission of sound was far from approaching the speed of his run. "Ha ha ha ha! Come quickly into Lord Rabbit's bowl." Ling Han stood up to look, and saw that the old Ginseng was currently in a mad run. Behind him followed a rabbit that was about half the height of a human being. One in front, and the other followed closely behind, both moving at incredibly fast speeds. If it was not for the fact that Ling Han had cultivated the Eye of Truth, he would definitely be unable to see either of them. Rabbit! Ling Han was incredibly surprised. It was actually that rabbit from the lower realm. Why had it appeared here? Chapter 1240. Realm Spirit Stone. The old Ginseng was running super fast, but Rabbit's strength was his speed. At the time, he was even able to compete with Hunyo. The further he chased, the nearer he came. His furry claws were just about to catch hold of the old Ginseng. "Mommy!" The old Ginseng hurriedly buried into the ground, but Rabbit was actually also capable of traveling in the ground. People said rabbits knew how to tunnel, and it was indeed true. Xiao, the old Ginseng suddenly scrambled out of the ground, and when he saw Ling Han right in front of him, he couldn't help but be greatly elated, and hurriedly pounced over. A white figure swept over, and they saw Rabbit also pop out. When he saw Ling Han, he involuntarily paused and then said, "Brat, quickly help me stop that Ginseng. I can give you a bite." This rascal rabbit was still as stingy as it had been. He actually would only give him a single bite. Ling Han laughed and said, "It has already entered into my bowl, so why should I still give you some?" He shot out a fist, and delivered a punch at Rabbit's claws. "Brat, you are really too disloyal," Rabbit called out, his figure flashing so fast it was like a flash of lightning, wanting to avoid Ling Han's fist and continue to catch the old Ginseng. This damn rabbit had actually broken through to the Sun-Moon tier. Ling Han was shocked. This speed of cultivation was really quite shocking. No, it was practically unimaginable. Though he was thinking that, he merely flicked a finger, and sword chi spread out, suddenly blocking Rabbit's path. This lightning sword technique was both fast and fierce. Practically no one on the same cultivation level could avoid it. They could only parry it, or be unable to oppose its blade. Brat, help Grandpa Ginseng kill this rabbit, and I will give you something good. The old Ginseng had drawn out a pink bib undergarment from who knew where, and was waving around it in his hand. Ling Han's face darkened involuntarily. This perverted Ginseng was currently standing on his shoulder as he waved around the undergarment. What would be left of his image? Ha 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 ha. Rabbit was instantly laughing loudly as he rolled around on the ground. He was practically tearing up from his laughter. The old Ginseng paused and then asked, Brat, you know this bastard rabbit? Carrot, what did you call me? Rabbit immediately jumped up, his red eyes widening. Ling Han felt a headache coming on. Why was it that those beside him were all unreliable? He held out a hand and pressed down and said, Rabbit, why are you here? This guy should still have been in the Great Ling Empire. After Uncle Rabbit came to the immortal realm, I went out to play around. Coincidentally, I actually barged into an ancient transfer formation, and have thus ended up here. Rabbit sighed. However, I am very shockingly lucky, and actually picked up a divine pill. After I ate it, I carelessly gained Sun-Moon tier cultivation. Fuck, what kind of luck was that? Ling Han shook his head. He had just barely entered into the Sun-Moon tier after so much effort. This kind of speed of advancement was already astonishingly fast, but he could not hold a candle to Rabbit's natural luck. He just ate an alchemical pill, and reached the top in a single leap. However, if he had depended on alchemical pills to advance, his foundations would definitely be unstable, and it would also be impossible for him to cultivate the pinnacle level. If it was not for the fact that Rabbit was born with extremely fast speed, a Sun-Moon tier like him would not have much battle prowess. For example, it was only because the old Ginseng had not broken through to the Sun-Moon tier that he had to escape. Otherwise, there would have been no need for him to run. If he fought with Rabbit, it was really indefinite who would be winning in the end. When the old Ginseng saw this, he couldn't help but feel a burst of courage and shouted at Rabbit, Bastard Rabbit, you have chased me all this way, come quick and kowtow to apologize to your Grandpa Ginseng. Carrot, come quickly into Uncle Rabbit's bowl. Rabbit was naturally not going to show any weakness, either. Stop. 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 Ling Han stretched out his hands and pressed down. Rabbit, where is that transfer formation? He had not thought that there would actually be a transfer formation connecting the joint peace planet and this place. Then it would be convenient for him to return in the future. He would not need to waste another 2 years' time in the galaxy. Brat, let me advise you to give up that idea. Rabbit shook his head and seriously said, that ancient transfer formation is extremely complex, and requires corresponding coordinates to be able to reach a specific place. You have completely no idea where the joint peace planet is. If you start it up rashly, you will only be sent to the ends of the universe. Ling Han was stunned for a while, and then immediately said, You damn Rabbit, you must have tampered with that transfer formation, right? If that wasn't it, he just happened to be transferred from the joint peace planet to the Cloud Apex planet, so a return trip should be along the way as well. Rabbit's eyes immediately turned in all directions. After he had transferred over, he had no idea what was going on, so he fiddled and tweaked around with it, and ruined the transfer formation entirely. That was why he didn't want to let Ling Han know. Che, that transfer formation was too old. After it brought Uncle Rabbit over, it collapsed by itself. How could that be my fault? He waved his short stump of a tail, and pushed all the blame cleanly off himself. Ling Han sighed. It looked like he would still have to use the cloud-piercing shuttle to return. Thankfully, it was only 2 years' time, and he could also cultivate in the Black Tower, so it could not be considered too much of a waste of time. Looks like you are doing quite well here? He did not think any further of the transfer formation. Of course, Rabbit said proudly. The medicinal effects of that divine pill that Uncle Rabbit ate have not been completely expended, and my cultivation level would grow considerably each day. Joining some fights here and exercising would be most suitable. And that was also because on the Cloud Apex planet, the humans and demonic beasts had joined forces because of their shared enemy. Otherwise, if this had been the joint peace planet, this rabbit would have long since been made into a stew. Yet the old Ginseng's eyes lit up, and he waved the undergarment in front of Ling Han's eyes as he quietly said, Brat, let's kill this bastard rabbit, all right? Just listen, This bastard rabbit said that there are still some medicinal effects active inside its body. If we eat it, it would definitely be greatly beneficial. Carrot, what did you say? Rabbit, who was also one with sharp ears, immediately jumped up. Just see if I won't eat you. You want to eat your grandpa ginseng? You are still 8 million years too early. The old ginseng used Ling Han like a shield, and ran around in circles around him. Meanwhile, Rabbit was chasing after him as he circled around Ling Han, and the other was running around on his body. Pa! Pa! Ling Han stretched out both hands, and caught hold of both Rabbit and the old ginseng at the same time. He said, "Do you believe that I will cook the both of you, and make a pot of rabbit stew with ginseng for some nutrition?" Both Rabbit and the old ginseng kept quiet out of fear, sensing that this guy in front of them was also a glutton. Ling Han tossed both the old ginseng and Rabbit on the ground and said, "Rabbit, you have been here for quite some years. What have you found out?" Rabbit took a look at the old ginseng, and couldn't help but salivate. Then it said, "In the two-realm battlefield, spiritual chi is lacking, and for cultivators, it is the worst kind of place. However, also because this place is where the two realms intersect, the collision of the regulations of two realms would occasionally evolve and become solid." Oh! Ling Han was surprised. Regulations could not be seen nor touched, and that was why they were so difficult to comprehend. Yet they would actually evolve and become solid. That is known as the Realm Spirit Stone. If one refines it, he would be able to comprehend the regulations. Uncle Rabbit had once found one, and had indeed advanced a huge step on the grasping of the Great Tao after refining it. It is said that sometimes, even saints of Genesis tier would come to the two-realm battlefield to find Realm Spirit Stones. However, this thing is really too rare. Furthermore, the higher the cultivation level, the more Realm Spirit Stones one would need to advance another step further. Realization dawned on Ling Han. No wonder the two great imperial empires were so actively fighting against the Netherworld, or maybe it should be said no wonder why conflicts would erupt so frequently between the beings from the two realms. That was because everyone wanted to find Realm Spirit Stones here. Chapter 1241. Looters. Where are Realm Spirit Stones usually found? Ling Han asked. Naturally, where the conflict between the two realms is the most intense, Rabbit replied. Then they're probably 5,000 kilometers ahead, Ling Han said. That place was located just in front of the Netherworld's territory. The encampment of the immortal realm lay on this side, while the encampment of the Netherworld lay on that side. The closer the encampments, the more intense the conflict. After all, beings from both realms wanted to obtain Realm Spirit Stones. Anyhow, was this war an invasion, a defensive one, or purely a war over benefits? Ling Han shook his head. This wasn't for him to think about. He had the reincarnation tree, and thus he wasn't in desperate need of Realm Spirit Stones. Moreover, the aim of his trip was to find the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Everything else could be put aside. He continued to wait for the Purple Moon Army. As for the old ginseng and Rabbit, they actually ended up with their arms around each other's shoulders after fighting for a while. It was as if they had become brothers. Ling Han could barely believe his eyes. Rabbit and the ginseng disappeared in no time after saying that they were going to search for Realm Spirit Stones. Ling Han didn't mind what they did. He continued to study cultivation and alchemy as he waited. He had obtained a pile of ancient pill recipes not long ago, and he needed to get his head around them. Although he had already become a level 8 alchemist, he only knew a pitifully small number of pill recipes. How could he live up to his title as the Alchemy Emperor? Ling Han ordered the Azura Demon Emperor to keep watch outside as he entered the Black Tower to cultivate and study. If the Purple Moon Army started to move, the Azura Demon Emperor would cause a huge commotion nearby to notify him. Pang! After comprehending under the reincarnation tree for an unknown period of time, he suddenly felt a large tremor ripple through the earth nearby. He hurriedly exited the Black Tower, only to find the Azura Demon Emperor engaged in an intense battle with a group of people. There were only 3 Sun-Moon tier elites among this group, with the other people all being at the Mountain River tier. However, the puppet that the Azura Demon Emperor was in was already very damaged. He was only at the Mountain River tier, so his divine sense still wasn't powerful enough. However, a few of his opponents just happened to specialize in divine sense attacks. This forced him onto his back foot. If the puppet he was in hadn't been at the Sun-Moon tier, The Azura Demon Emperor probably would have died under the relentless attacks already. Ling Han couldn't help but feel irritated. He leaped over and shouted, "Stop! Master!" The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly dashed toward Ling Han as if he had seen his savior. He was on the verge of being beaten to death, and now that Ling Han had descended like a deity, he was so moved that he was on the verge of tears. However, the group of people didn't stop. Instead, they chuckled coldly, with one person saying, "Damn, you actually dare to collude with wicked beings from the netherworld. How courageous!" These people actually discovered the Azura Demon Emperor's true identity. Ling Han casually swung his fist and forced the group of people back, saying, "This is my servant. What does he have to do with the netherworld?" The Azura Demon Emperor hid behind Ling Han, and he transmitted his voice using his divine sense, saying, "Master, in order to surveil the Purple Moon Army, I released my body outside the puppet. However, I was coincidentally seen by these people, and they started to attack me." He was a mist-like being, and even though he couldn't fly in the immortal realm, he could still elongate his body and survey the surroundings from a high vantage point. Unexpectedly, this had led to unwanted trouble. Ling Han nodded in understanding. This wasn't the Azura Demon Emperor's fault. In fact, he had only done this to better carry out his orders. "Sir, if you don't move, we'll have to treat you as a traitor of the immortal realm and kill you along with that wicked being," the people warned. "No need to speak nonsense with him. Perhaps he's a fat sheep. So, it'll be better if we just kill him." Read more chapter on novel full. Maybe he's the descendant of some large clan. If that's the case, there'll be heaps of treasures on him. Greed appeared on their faces. Ling Han suddenly came to a realization, and he said, "You people are looters, right? You specialize in looting lone travelers." "Hee hee hee." The group of people chuckled coldly, and said, "Since you've guessed our identity, go die." Although Ling Han was also at the Sun-Moon tier, he was only at the middle stage of the low extreme. Moreover, he was all by himself. Meanwhile, the group of looters had 3 Sun-Moon tier elites. After spending numerous years here, they had also accumulated quite some wealth, and used their merit points to obtain quite some treasures. If they unleashed these treasures, they could even kill elites at the peak stage of the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. This was one of the reasons they dared to act so wantonly. Killing intent flashed across Ling Han's eyes. Since they planned to kill him, he didn't need to hold back, either. He would kill them all. Together. The group of people naturally wouldn't battle him one-on-one. A dozen or so people instantly charged toward Ling Han and the Azura Demon Emperor. Sabers flashed and swords slashed. Killing intent permeated through the air. Ling Han's expression became dark, and he said, "You people are ambushing your allies instead of fighting against the netherworld on the front lines. How admirable." He clicked his finger. Pa! The head of a looter instantly exploded, and his divine sense was also obliterated along with it. He was as dead as could be. Damn it! The ruffians were infuriated. However, the person who had been killed was only at the Mountain River tier, so they didn't become afraid. They continued to attack Ling Han. Ling Han threw a punch. Pa! The head of another person instantly exploded. His divine sense was also obliterated. If one wanted to kill an immortal for good, they had to obliterate their divine sense. Otherwise, an immortal could use their divine sense to possess another person. If they possessed a good host, perhaps they would become even stronger than before. Pa 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 pa. The heads of the looters continued to explode, causing clouds of blood to soar into the air. There were only a dozen or so looters, so how could they stand up to Ling Han's vicious massacre? In the flash of an eye, only the 3 Sun-Moon tier elites remained. However, these 3 elites were all trembling in terror. The youth opposite them was like a god of death, killing one of them with each punch. Moreover, he had killed them with absolute ease. His overwhelming power absolutely petrified them. He was far too powerful. "Damn it!" one of the looters roared. "Second brother, third brother, this is no time to hold back. Hurry up and unleash your divine seals. Otherwise, we're all going to die here today." A crimson glow instantly erupted from his body. Boundless raging flame surged out, and his aura instantly increased manifold. Twisted smiles appeared on the faces of the other 2, and they both retrieved divine seals before slapping them on their bodies. They had all practiced the same cultivation technique, and thus they were all using the same divine seal at this moment, soaring crimson flames. Their power instantly soared to the peak stage of the medium extreme of the sun-moon tier. In fact, it was already bordering on the early stage of the high extreme. Die! The three people roared as they lunged toward Ling Han. Ling Han was astonished. Such power-raising divine seals were extremely valuable. Yet these three looters each possessed one such divine seal? They had probably used their merit points to redeem them. No wonder so many people stayed here even after completing their service. Ignoring the startling death rate, the two-realm battlefield was truly a land of treasures. As long as one earned enough merit points, they could obtain any treasure they wanted. However, the divine seals were truly wasted on these three people. Ling Han unleashed a wisp of heaven's might. Pa pa pa! The three people instantly fell to their knees, their bodies becoming so feeble that they couldn't even unleash an inkling of their power. The divine seals had merely elevated their power. However, their divine sense hadn't been strengthened at all. That being the case, how could they withstand Ling Han's kingly might? A might that used heavenly tribulation as its foundation. Chapter 1242. Treasure Map. Don't kill me! The three looters were so terrified that tears started to stream down their faces. With the threat of death looming over them, their cowardly instincts instantly kicked in. They were only begging for their own lives, and they clearly didn't give a rat's arse about their companions. Are your lives worth anything? Ling Han said indifferently. Master, let little Azura deal with them. There was a ball of fire in the Azura Demon Emperor's chest. He had almost been killed by them just then, so he naturally wanted to kill them with his own hands now. Killing intent surged from his body. In any case, he was a demon from the netherworld, so killing people didn't make him feel guilty or traumatized at all. No! Don't kill me! The three looters shouted in panic. Spare me! I have an ancient map that reveals the location of an ancient treasure. One of the looters said. What? The other two looters exclaimed in astonishment. Didn't you tell us that the treasure map was already lost? So it turns out that you pocketed it for yourself. There was fury on their faces as they chided and condemned each other. They were gripped with internal conflict. The Azura Demon Emperor was especially observant, and he knew that Ling Han's interest had been piqued. He immediately turned to the looters and shouted, What treasure map? Hurry up and hand it over. Will you spare me if I hand it over? The owner of the treasure map asked cautiously. Pa! The Azura Demon Emperor instantly smashed the head of another looter in pieces, and threatened, Do you have the right to negotiate with me? The person's face instantly turned green with fright, and he hurriedly exclaimed, Don't kill me! I'll take you over to retrieve the treasure map straight away. It's not on you? The Azura Demon Emperor asked. The person frantically shook his head and replied, No! Although the looters were companions, none of them trusted each other. So, how could he keep the treasure map in his personal spatial spirit tool? They could loot others, and others could naturally loot them as well. Thus, they definitely wouldn't keep valuable items on themselves. Otherwise, how could they negotiate with others? If they kept everything on themselves, they would be done for once their spatial spirit tool was taken. The Azura Demon Emperor glanced at Ling Han, and saw that he didn't mind. He instantly became more daring, and he lashed out at the other looter. Pa! The other looter's head was also smashed into pieces. Blood and gore splattered all over the remaining looter's face, causing him to almost wet his pants in terror. Although they were vicious when killing others, their knees would immediately go weak when they ended up on the receiving end. The Azura Demon Emperor guarded the looter, and Ling Han walked behind them. The looter led them to a small valley, where he removed a boulder to reveal a ring that was stuck in a gap underneath it. If the looter hadn't retrieved it for them, it would have been almost impossible for Ling Han and the Azura Demon Emperor to find. The Azura Demon Emperor snatched the ring, and respectfully handed it to Ling Han. There was an obsequious look on his face. Ling Han accepted the ring, and scanned it with his divine sense. He saw that it was quite full, with true origin stones, a few cultivation techniques, and a few pieces of godly metal. Finally there was a map. He took the map out and asked, "Where's this treasure map from?" "I don't know. I only found it after robbing a group of people," the looter said. "Young master, can I leave now?" "Leave your mom." The Azura Demon Emperor instantly launched a fist at the looter. Pa! The last looter was also killed. Ling Han didn't feel a shred of sympathy. These people specially targeted the cultivators here, and their actions were truly abhorrent and reprehensible. They should have been fighting against external enemies, yet they lingered behind the front lines and targeted their allies. Everything they did was deserving of contempt. This place. Where is it? Ling Han looked at the red circle in the center region of the map. This red circle probably marked the location of the treasure. However, the entire terrain on the map seemed extremely unfamiliar. Hang on, I have another treasure map on me. I obtained it in the 12 Heaven Mystery Realm. Ling Han recalled that the 12 Heaven Mystery Realm had been constructed by the 12 generals under the Heavenly River King. After receiving the inheritance of a palace, one would receive a set of coordinates that corresponded to some place in the immortal realm. The Heavenly River King's supreme inheritances were hidden at these locations. Ling Han had stayed put on the Joint Peace Planet before, so he naturally hadn't been able to search for these coordinates. Now that he had come to the Cloud Apex Planet, he finally had the opportunity to search for it. Anyhow, who on earth is the Heavenly River King? The secret techniques that I obtained in that mystery realm are all supreme techniques, be it the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art or the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow. They're all first-rate secret techniques, at least for now. Judging by this fact, the Heavenly River King's inheritance is at least at the Heavenly Body tier. Oh, that's right. I also obtained an egg in that mystery realm. With a thought, an egg immediately appeared before Ling Han. He had obtained it in the 12 Heaven Mystery Realm. Afterward, he had left it in the Black Tower. However, it hadn't grown or changed a single bit, so he had almost forgotten about its existence. I can feel vitality coming from it, so it can still be hatched. However, how much longer is it going to take? This is the descendant of an azure flame vulture, so theoretically speaking, it shouldn't take so long to hatch. Could it be because I left it in the Black Tower? After all, the Black Tower lacks the regulations of heaven and earth, so it can't be regarded as a legitimate world even though it can hold living beings. Moreover, I left it under the reincarnation tree, and it seems like this did something mysterious to the egg. Will the hatched azure flame vulture still be an azure flame vulture? Should I just eat it instead? This thought flashed past Ling Han's mind. In the end, however, he decided to keep the egg. Perhaps it would hatch if he took it out and let it enjoy the sun more often. He left the egg resting there, and he sat on a boulder himself. Elites at the Sun-Moon tier are probably strong enough to shatter the barriers to small worlds. However, it'll still be extremely difficult for them to enter these small worlds due to the regulations of heaven and earth. They'll have to either suppress or sever their cultivation. Of course, the people from the celestial realm don't need to do this. After reaching a certain tier, one can ignore the regulations of the small worlds. Could it be that the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire is from the celestial realm? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had told him to obtain true dragon's horns and Heavenly Phoenix's feathers, and both were from saint-level beasts. Moreover, judging by his tone, it seemed as if he viewed these beings with disdain. This would all make sense if he were a great elite from the celestial realm. Fuck! What kind of place is the lower realm? Why did it attract so many freaks? Ling Han felt a slight headache. The Azura Demon Emperor had told him that the lower realm had already ascended to the immortal realm once. However, for some reason, it had fallen down to become a small world again. It was because of this that Ling Han had been able to open the sky for a second time. Perhaps I'll only have the right to figure this out when I enter the celestial realm. Right now, there's one thing that I can definitely confirm. Even Genesis tier saints can't hack a piece of land from the immortal realm and transform it into a small world. Only those who have grasped both the power of construction and power of destruction can do this. I obtained the Black Tower, and it seems like I inherited a great danger along with it. Ling Han shook his head and cleared his mind. He planned to put the egg away and return to his original spot, where he would continue to observe the Purple Moon Army. Shwa! Right at this moment, a sword light suddenly slashed at him. It possessed a devastating might, and it was as if the sky were about to collapse. Comment. Die, despicable thief. Chapter 1243. Disciple of the Heaven's Sword Palace. This slash was incredibly quick. In fact, it was so quick that it arrived in front of Ling Han before the sound of its swing even traveled over. Ling Han replied with his fist. Pang! His fist collided with the sword light, instantly causing it to shatter into pieces. A human figure flew back in retreat. However, that person was fairly skilled, and they dispelled most of the force from Ling Han's punch by doing a backflip through the air. They landed on the ground steadily. It was a female, and she looked to be around 20 years old. She was quite beautiful, yet there was an air of arrogance on her face. If she weren't the darling daughter of some powerful family, then she was probably the beloved young miss of some clan. She had clearly been spoiled. Behind her, another 7 people were briskly walking over. They were all men, and only one of them was a white-haired elder. The other 6 were all spirited young men. Junior sister. The 6 young men immediately ran over and surrounded the young beauty. Their voices were filled with care and concern. Junior sister, are you okay? That person didn't hurt you, did he? Despicable. He actually dares to attack junior sister. These young men glared at Ling Han as they expressed their concern for the young beauty. It was as if they wanted to kill him with their glare. Meanwhile, they completely ignored the fact that it was the young woman who had attacked him first. Ling Han couldn't help but find this funny. This woman had attacked him out of the blue, and he had simply retaliated in self-defense. Why were they glaring at him as if he had done something abhorrent? He shook his head and said, "Don't you guys think you owe me an explanation and apology?" Explanation? Apology? The young men chuckled coldly. This person had injured their junior sister, yet he actually wanted them to offer an explanation and apologize? Had his brain been kicked in by a donkey? Humph! You're a mere looter who deserves to be killed. Yet, you actually want us to offer an explanation and apologize? Keep dreaming. One of the young men shouted. Ling Han's anger subsided a little when he heard this. Indeed, one didn't need to hold back when attacking a looter. Otherwise, they would be risking their own life. However, which part of him looked like a looter? You people think I'm a looter? Ling Han shook his head and said, "Your observation skills are truly trash. It's time to get your eyes checked. Despicable thief, the map in your hands belonged to one of our senior brothers. If you aren't a looter, why is the map in your hands?" The young woman asked angrily. She had already caught her breath. "I'm not sure if you're joking," Ling Han said with a mocking laugh. "Couldn't I have killed another looter and snatched it from them?" "Hey, young man, if that's the case, please return the map to us," the elder said. His voice was low, and it possessed a powerful might. He was an elite at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so he naturally wasn't afraid of Ling Han. Ling Han laughed in anger and said, "Let's forget about whom this map belongs to first. Since I obtained this map, shouldn't you people be more polite if you want it back? I'm not your slave, yet you people are acting all high and mighty. What, do I owe you people something?" "Bull ****, a young man chided. "That map was originally ours, so isn't it natural that you return it to us?" Ling Han sneered and said, "Originally yours? This map has existed for tens of millions of years, and it's an item from the ancient past. Its original owner has died years ago. So, how is it originally yours? At most, it's something that you people snatched from someplace else. There's no need to act so righteously." "Young man, are you asking for trouble?" the elder said with a humph. "Seventh uncle, there's no need to speak nonsense with him. Seize him," the young woman shouted. Out of everyone present, only she dared to speak to the elder like this. Who told her to be so spoiled and pampered? The elder pondered for a moment and then said, "Fine. Try not to hurt him." The 7 young men all chuckled coldly. They only needed to try not to hurt him. In other words, hurting him would be fine. The strength of these young men was far above the strength of the looters from before. Apart from the elder being at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, the 7 young men were also at the Sun-Moon tier. Their cultivation levels ranged from the early stage of the low extreme to the peak stage of the low extreme. However, none of them were at the medium extreme. This made sense. If they weren't powerful enough, how would they dare to look for that group of looters? Judging by their attitude, the treasure map was genuinely a valuable item. With a thought, Ling Han placed both the treasure map and the egg back into the Black Tower. He then turned to them and coldly said, "Although you people aren't looters, you're not much better than them. I'll give you people one final warning. Apologize to me. Otherwise, pray for the blessings of heaven." Laughable. It's already come to this, yet you still dare to threaten us. Kill him and be done with it. It's not like his spatial spirit tool will run away. That's right, kill him. We're disciples of the Heaven's Sword Palace. The 7 young men all voiced their opinions. Heaven's Sword Palace. Ling Han's killing intent instantly soared. He hadn't gone looking for the 5 sects yet they had coincidentally crossed paths here. As expected of the 5 sects, they've always been this arrogant and domineering. Aren't you afraid that I have a powerful background? One that can annihilate the Heaven's Sword Palace with a flip of their hands? He asked calmly. Haha. People with powerful backgrounds don't go running around alone. They definitely have people guarding them in secret, a young man scoffed. Did this person think they were fools? They knew very well whom they could offend and whom they couldn't. Let me tell you something else, another young man said. Those from powerful clans or powerful sects all have clear symbols on their clothing. He lifted his sleeve, revealing a small sword that was sewn into it. It was very small, and one wouldn't notice it if they weren't paying attention. So that's how it is. Ling Han nodded and said, "Thanks for the information. As your reward, I'll send you all on your way." He planned to obliterate the 5 sects, but he didn't plan to kill every single member of the 5 sects. He believed that no matter how despicable a sect, there were always members who were just and noble. Thus, he only intended to disperse the 5 sects and kill all the higher-ups would let everyone else leave. However, these people in front of him, they stirred his killing intent. How bold and shameless, the 7 young men sneered. Although they were young, they had all cultivated for at least 100,000 years. Moreover, their hands were stained with blood. So, how could they possibly be lenient toward him? The treasure map is of utmost importance and secrecy. We can't let him live. Die! The 7 young men ruthlessly charged toward him. Ling Han humphed coldly. He then snapped his fingers, sending a torrent of ferocious sword chi toward his opponents. He had held back before not because of soft-heartedness, but because he didn't have a habit of killing for no reason. However, these people were seeking death now, so he naturally didn't mind sending them into the afterlife. *T. The elder's expression changed drastically when he saw Ling Han unleash his attack. This was far too terrifying. He had only snapped his fingers, yet the battle prowess that he unleashed was already nearing his level. One had to realize that Ling Han was already at the middle stage of the low extreme. Moreover, he possessed power that could surpass 6 stars. Thus, his true power was already at the peak stage of the medium extreme. Just how terrifying was this? Pu. The torrent of sword chi instantly crushed the heads of the 7 young men. None of them had a complete corpse. Although the elder had dashed over, he was a step too late. He could only watch on as his 7 juniors were massacred before him. These were prodigies that the sect had raised for over 100,000 years. The elder's heart bled. He glowered at Ling Han and spat, "Brat, I'm going to slice your flesh off piece by piece and feed it to dogs." Chapter 1244. Invincible Sword Might. 4 Sun Moon tier forces like the Heaven Sword sect, their strongest beings would only be at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. Thus, those who were at the low extreme of the Sun Moon tier were also integral members of the sect. In fact, they could even be regarded as the pillars of the sect. Now, however, they had been killed as if they were mere ants. Countless millennia's worth of training and resources had disappeared in a flash. The elder had a reason to be furious. He opened his hands, and 3 suns and 2 moons materialized behind him, radiating with a boundless murderous aura. He was at the middle stage of the high extreme. Pang! Ling Han replied with a fist, Yet he was instantly sent flying. There was a difference of 2 stars between them, and it was truly too great to overcome. A cloud of blood erupted from his body. Luckily, his godly bones were strong enough, and wouldn't be broken so easily. Good one, brat. There was a look of immense shock on the elder's face as he stared at Ling Han. He was 2 minor levels above Ling Han. Theoretically speaking, this was a difference of 8 stars. Ling Han should have definitely been insta-killed by him. However, although Ling Han was no match for him in terms of power, he was merely injured, and not killed. In fact, his injuries weren't even severe. How could he accept this? No matter how strong you are, you still won't escape death today, the elder said coldly. He had an overwhelming advantage over Ling Han. Thus, even if he couldn't insta-kill him, he could still kill him if he landed a few more blows on him. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "I don't see why not." He retrieved an explosive thunder pill and tossed it into his mouth. Pa pa pa. Lightning instantly arced around his body, and his power increased explosively. Explosive thunder pill. This was a pill that could raise one's battle prowess by 2 stars. Ling Han shook his arms and legs. He felt like his body was full of energy. The explosive thunder pill was a level 6 divine pill. Theoretically speaking, it could raise the battle prowess of an elite at the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier by 2 stars. However, the higher one's cultivation level, the lower the increase in battle prowess. Right now, Ling Han's battle prowess had already soared to the peak stage of the medium extreme. In other words, the explosive thunder pill hadn't been able to raise his battle prowess by 2 stars. Instead, it had only been able to raise it by 1 star and a bit. However, this was still very terrifying. His power had increased 10-fold. Come again. He charged toward the elder from the Heaven's Sword Palace. Pang, pang, pang. The 2 of them continued to exchange blows. In terms of power, Ling Han was still inferior to the elder. After all, there was still a difference of 1 star. The elder regained his confidence after a while and said, "Haha, young man, the earlier you die, the earlier you'll be able to enter the afterlife. Hurry up and end your feudal resistance. Let this old man send you on your way. That way, you'll at least die a less painful death." The pill didn't seem to help his opponent too much. Don't get excited too early. Ling Han activated the power of heavenly tribulation, and a wisp of heaven's might instantly surged from his body. What? The color instantly drained from the elder's face. This overwhelming might caused even his heart to constrict. How could someone unleash such a devastating might? This was far too terrifying. It was as if he were standing before heaven and earth. A sense of boundless fear and awe rose from the bottom of his heart. Before such an immense aura, his power instantly plunged 10-fold. Their power was on the same level now. How is this possible? The elder yelped in astonishment. Ling Han smiled faintly. Apart from him, who else could leisurely study and analyze heavenly tribulation? Who else could comprehend the heavenly Tao? When others endured their heavenly tribulation, they all had to unleash their full power. Meanwhile, Ling Han's physique was a level above his cultivation. Thus, he could remain calm and relaxed even amid his heavenly tribulation. Old geezer, accept your death. Although the elder was astonished, he didn't become panicked. His opponent did indeed possess all kinds of techniques. However, their power was still at the same level at this moment. So, what was there to be afraid of? You're still 10 million years too young to kill me, the elder said with a humph. He unsheathed a sword and slashed at Ling Han. He was an elder of the Heaven's Sword Palace, so he was naturally an elite in the sword Tao. Moreover, the sword in his hand was a level 7 god tool. He had nurtured this sword for countless years, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was one with the sword. Their combined might was greater than the sum of their individual might. As his sword swung forward, nothing about him seemed old. Instead, he was like a panther leaping through the air. A profound sword intent radiated from his body, and it drew on the great might of heaven and earth as it slashed toward Ling Han. Is that so? Ling Han said with a cold smile. He unsheathed his divine demon sword. Wang! His sword dazzled brilliantly as it unleashed a formidable might. One had to realize that the divine demon sword had also experienced heavenly tribulation several times. Moreover, it was nurtured by Ling Han's martial intent day and night, causing it to also be engraved with heaven's might. Although it was only a level 5 god tool, its might far exceeded this level. It was like Ling Han, its battle prowess couldn't be determined by its level. Once the divine demon sword appeared, the sword in the elder's hand instantly lost its luster. After all, the divine demon sword was forged from devouring metal, a supreme material that could evolve to divine metal in the future. The elder truly started to panic at this moment. His opponent's sword was far too vicious. In fact, it caused a sense of terror to grip at his heart. Ling Han unleashed his lightning sword technique at the elder. The elder hurriedly parried, yet Ling Han's sword technique was both quick and powerful. This exhausted him in no time, and he felt as if he would be killed if he made any mistake. His body was drenched in cold sweat. It was as if he were treading the fine line between life and death. One mistake and his life would come to an end. A boundless chill gripped at his body. Right now, all he wanted was to flee from this god-forsaken place. He wanted to return to the sect, where he could ask a great elite to kill this young man. However, the longer they battled, the bolder Ling Han became. The might of the divine demon sword had given him a pleasant surprise. As expected of something that can evolve to divine metal in the future. Not only is it malleable, but it's also immensely powerful. It was as if the divine demon sword had originally been at or even above the Genesis tier. He simply needed to unlock its potential with his power. By doing so, he would be able to unleash a devastating might. His divine sword possessed the potential to soar through the heavens. Who could withstand its power? Pu. Blood sprayed through the air, and the elder was drenched in blood as waves upon waves of sword chi slashed toward him. This was the true might of the divine demon's sword. The sword chi that it unleashed would transform in tens of thousands of sword projections, each of which was deadly. The elder was cornered and he couldn't help but shout, "Who on earth are you? Why are you targeting the Heaven Sword Palace?" Ling Han almost burst into laughter. "Has your head been trampled by a donkey? It was clearly you people who targeted me first. Why are you twisting the facts?" He shook his head and said, "Since you've asked, I really do have great animosity toward the Heaven Sword Palace. One day, I'll erase this sect from the face of the immortal realm." The elder was stunned. His opponent really did have animosity toward the Heaven Sword Palace. "I'll tell you before you die. I'm from the lower realm," Ling Han said coldly. His attacks became even quicker as he spoke, and he sent tens of thousands of sword projections toward the elder. Each sword projection was equivalent to the full power strike of Ling Han, so how could the elder withstand them? "Why were you Ling Han? Aya!" A person suddenly flashed into the elder's mind. However, he was instantly sent flying by the sword projections, with both of his arms being sliced off. Columns of blood spurted into the air. However, it was as if he hadn't felt this, and he simply stared at Ling Han in shock. There was an incredulous look in his eyes. Everyone in the 5 sects knew of Ling Han. He had opened the sky and ascended to the immortal realm, destroying the 5 sects' operation of countless years in the process. However, only a few years had passed, so how had this person advanced from the Shattering Void tier to the Sun Moon tier? Moreover, his battle prowess was far too astounding. He was clearly at the middle stage of the low extreme, yet even the elder wasn't his opponent. Such a formidable enemy was actually lurking right under the 5 sects' nose. Chapter 1245. Lovers finally reunite. "Old Giza, are you prepared to die now?" Ling Han asked with a smile. The elder from the Heaven Sword Palace simply glared at Ling Han. Origin power surged from his severed shoulders, transforming into 2 arms. Powerful immortals wouldn't lose their battle prowess even if all 4 of their limbs were severed. However, the elder had already lost his courage to battle at this moment. He was going to return to the Heaven Sword Palace immediately. He would report Ling Han's appearance to the higher-ups. This brat was far too terrifying, was like a freak. If they left him alone for a few more years, wouldn't he reach the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier? Or even the Heavenly Body tier? At that time, it would be useless even if the 5 sects formed an alliance. Who would be able to oppose him? Right now, however, there were still numerous elites in the 5 sects. The strongest individuals more so possessed battle prowess that could surpass 4 stars. Any one of them would be able to kill this brat. However, his life was extremely precious, so he definitely couldn't die here. This was what the elder told himself. He definitely wasn't a coward who would do anything to live. He was simply staying alive so he could contribute more to the sect. However, he hadn't been able to oppose Ling Han even at his peak. Now that both his arms had been severed, how could he still escape? Although he was an elite of the Heaven's Sword Palace, the relatively low standing of this sect meant that he had no trump cards on him. He had spent his entire fortune on the level 7 God tool. Unfortunately, even this God tool hadn't been able to save him. The elder fought as if his life depended on it was going to flee from this place. As long as he made it to Wolfang City, Ling Han definitely wouldn't dare to target him anymore. Wolfang City prohibited cultivators of the immortal realm from killing each other, regardless of what animosity existed between them. Read more chapter at VIP Novel. They had to focus their energy on external enemies. Ling Han chuckled coldly. You still want to escape? He lashed out with his sword, and tens of thousands of sword projections burst from the divine demon sword. This wasn't the mysterious 3,000, but rather the inherent might of the divine demon sword. If it weren't this powerful, how could it live up to its future identity as divine metal? Xiao xiao xiao. The ferocity of the sword projections was earth-shattering. Meanwhile, the Elder's level 7 God tool parried this attack by itself, buying time for the Elder to escape. This was the difference between God tools and ordinary weapons. God tools either possessed a tool spirit or possessed martial intent. In both cases, it was equivalent to the God tool possessing a consciousness of its own. Ling Han released his divine demon sword, and let it battle the Elder's level 7 God tool on its own. With his hands now free, he retrieved his annihilating dragon star arrow. Xiao! The arrow was as quick as lightning as it whizzed toward the Elder. Pooh! The Elder's back instantly became a patch of mangled flesh. He wailed in agony as he collapsed to the ground. This arrow had wounded him quite severely. At the same time, the divine demon sword also unleashed tens of thousands of sword projections and suppressed the Elder's level 7 God tool. This was truly hard to fathom. A level 5 God tool had actually suppressed a level 7 God tool. This defied all the laws of cultivation. However, who let the material of the divine demon sword be so freakish? Ling Han dashed forward, using his finger like a sword as he unleashed his lightning sword technique. Killing intent oozed from his body. His physique was on par with level 6 God metal, and thus the attacks from his finger sword couldn't be underestimated. Such an attack wouldn't be weaker than an attack from a level 6 God tool. The Elder still wanted to resist, yet his heart was pierced by Ling Han's sword chi. His body was more so slashed into two. However, immortals wouldn't die so easily, and his divine sense dashed out from his body, attempting to flee into the distance. Theoretically speaking, one's divine sense would be like a fish out of the water. Once it left the body, it would become exhausted and eventually die. However, the more powerful one was, the slower the rate of their divine sense's exhaustion. Elites at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier could survive in this state for several months. This would be enough time for one to find a fresh corpse or a living person to possess. Humph! Ling Han lightly snapped his fingers, unleashing a burst sword chi that caught up to the Elder. Pa! The Elder's divine sense was instantly obliterated. He had died once and for all. The Elder's divine sword instantly rang in sorrow. It was just about to flee, yet it was struck several hundred times by Ling Han's divine demon sword. The martial intent within the divine sword was ruthlessly erased, causing it to transform back into an ordinary sword. Without martial intent, God tools wouldn't be God tools anymore. They would simply be sharp weapons. Ling Han put the divine sword away. He could let the divine demon sword swallow the weapon later. He naturally wouldn't waste it. I never thought I'd come across the 5 sects in such a way. Anyhow, they actually sent people to look for this map. Judging by their actions, this map is definitely extraordinary. Ling Han retrieved the treasure map again. However, he knew pitifully little about the Cloud Apex planet, so he couldn't figure out the location marked on the map for the life of him. I guess even the 5 sects couldn't make head nor tail of this map. Otherwise, they wouldn't have run around randomly. They would have definitely gone to retrieve the treasures. I'll see how things go. If I'm lucky enough to come across the illustrated area, it won't hurt to look for the marked location and retrieve the treasures. Otherwise, there's no need for me to waste my time. Ling Han returned to his original spot and continued to wait for the Purple Moon Army's movements. Meanwhile, he retrieved the egg and placed it beside himself so that it could enjoy more time in the sun. Perhaps this could speed up its growth. Several days passed, and Rabbit and the old ginseng finally returned. They both appeared especially disheveled. As it turned out, they had come across elites from the netherworld. If it hadn't been for their ability to tunnel underground, they would have definitely been made into rabbit meat and old ginseng soup. Rabbit tugged at Little Han and said, "Little Han, hurry up and come with Uncle Rabbit. We've got to take revenge." "Yeah, that's right. Grandpa Ginseng has never suffered so badly before. We can't let it slide like this. That one-eyed dragon almost chopped my third leg off. I've got to use a 20-year-old doo-doo to suppress my fright." As he said this, the old ginseng retrieved a pink doo-doo and took a huge sniff. His expression instantly became carefree and relaxed. "Pah!" Ling Han immediately kicked him aside. How could a spirit of the 5 elements be so sleazy? Compared to him, Rock Spirit was completely like a saint. "I don't have time." Ling Han rejected their request and said, "But since you two have so much time on your hands, hurry up and observe the Purple Moon Army for me. I need to know when they're setting off." As expected of someone I have high hopes for. The old ginseng ran back over, and his expression was as if he were looking at a fellow sleaze. "However, you're much greedier than Grandpa Ginseng. You actually want to target an entire army. Even Grandpa Ginseng has to admire your courage." Ling Han chuckled as he launched another kick. There was a wretched wail as the old ginseng flew toward the horizon. "Brat, have you had enough yet?" This voice became more and more distant. In the end, the old ginseng became a little star in the sky. Peace and quiet finally returned. "Ha!" Ling Han suddenly stood up. 50 kilometers away, a brigade of soldiers was walking out from the encampment of the Purple Moon Army. With his eyesight, he could naturally see 100 kilometers away. Anyhow, he was observing from this far away because the Purple Moon Army had an elite at the Eternal River tier keeping guard. The perceptive ability of such an elite would definitely be terrifying. Thus, he didn't dare to venture too close. Otherwise, he'd have no one to complain to if he were mistaken for an enemy scout and killed. Although killing fellow cultivators was forbidden, who would dare to question the actions of an Eternal River tier elite? Might was right. This had been proved time and time again. In any case, there was finally movement from the Purple Moon Army, although this was only a small brigade. Ling Han activated his Eye of Truth. This way, he would be able to see the appearance of everyone more clearly. This brigade was only 100 strong, and Ling Han started his observation from the head of the brigade. When his gaze moved 1/3 of the way down, his eyes suddenly locked onto a person. There was a look of emotion on his face. It was the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Chapter 1246. Meeting. 10,000 years had passed, and he was finally able to see his lover again. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was a prodigy, and she had advanced to the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier in just 10,000 years. The most beneficial aspect of this was that her countenance hadn't aged a single bit. She was still just as beautiful as before. She had been the #1 beauty in the lower realm, and even after arriving in the immortal realm, she was still a breathtaking beauty. Otherwise, why would Prince Xie have fallen in love with her at first sight? However, beauties like her weren't one of a kind anymore. If this weren't the case, Xie Donglai would have had no chance with her. Numerous other higher-ups would have taken her as their concubine. Why did men cultivate to become stronger? Wasn't it for power and beautiful women? Anyhow, after being stared at for so long, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden surprisingly noticed the unwelcome attention. She looked in Ling Han's direction. "What's wrong?" a woman next to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked. She was an ordinary-looking woman, and she had noticed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's slight change in expression. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden smiled faintly before shaking her head and saying, "It's nothing." However, a feeling of apprehension gripped at her heart. Had the Xie clan found her already? Ling Han watched as the brigade left the Purple Moon Army's encampment. He then hurriedly followed after them. The old ginseng caught up to Ling Han and shouted, "Brat, don't forget Grandpa Ginseng when you're flirting with women." Beautiful women and whatnot were his favorite. Rabbit snickered and said, "Good for nothing." However, he also followed after them. This was because Ling Han was heading toward the depths of the two-realm passageway. He was still hoping that Ling Han would exact revenge for them. The group of 3 people tailed the brigade of soldiers. However, the regulations of heaven and earth in this place were especially strange, and this made it extremely hard to advance quickly. After walking for a day, they had only managed to advance 500 or so kilometers. Such a slow pace would be unfathomable in the outside world. Night fell, and the brigade stopped to set up camp. They needed to rest for the night so that they could stay in peak condition. Ling Han and the others stopped someplace far away from the brigade. They would also rest for the night. However, the old ginseng was unwilling to behave, and he insisted on sneaking into the females' camp during the night. In the end, he was viciously beaten by Ling Han. What a joke, his wife was in that camp, so how could he tolerate the old ginseng sneaking over to peep? "Brat, you're so disloyal. Can you really pick up so many women by yourself? You're having the lion's share, so can't you at least leave some scraps for Grandpa Ginseng? 1,000 curses upon you." The old ginseng was both angry and exasperated. "If you utter any more nonsense, I'll cook you into soup," Ling Han threatened. "Do it. Do it." Rabbit started to drool and it said, "Uncle Rabbit will prepare some firewood." He tossed a pile of firewood onto the ground. This wasn't any ordinary firewood, but firewood that was made from rosewood. Fire lit on such kind of wood was extremely good for alchemy and tool refinement. Using such firewood to cook was incredibly extravagant. The old ginseng was shocked. He pointed at Rabbit and said, "Holy fuck you *TTY Rabbit, you were still calling me brother during the day. So, it turns out that you had your eyes on my flesh. Carrot, if you don't go to hell, who's going to go to hell? Sacrifice yourself for the good of the world. Uncle Rabbit will remember you forever." Rabbit pretended to be serious. It rubbed its chin and said, "Little Han, should we wash this old ginseng first?" "Wash your mom." The old ginseng hurriedly fled into the distance. He was afraid that they would become serious and really chop him into pieces. Ling Han wasn't in the mood to deal with these 2 living treasures. He started to mull over how he would strike a conversation with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The next day, the brigade of soldiers broke camp and advanced another 500 or so kilometers. They repeated this process, and after 4 days, they arrived in the depths of the two-realm battlefield. The surroundings became increasingly harsh. Not only was there a lack of spiritual qi, but the clash between regulations also became increasingly evident. The regulations of the immortal realm were stronger in some places, while the regulations of the netherworld were stronger in other places. This led to a strange phenomenon. 2 beings who were equally as powerful, one from the immortal realm and one from the netherworld. Being from the immortal realm would be stronger in some places, while the being from the netherworld would be stronger in other places. Thus, it was extremely important to pick a suitable location if one wanted to battle in this place. Otherwise, those who should win might end up losing, and those who should lose might end up turning the tables. Anyhow, the brigade from the Purple Moon Army finally came across netherworld military on this day. This was also a small brigade. After noticing each other, they faced off for a short moment before immediately launching into an intense battle. "This is my chance." Ling Han immediately charged toward the netherworld army. When coming across beings from the netherworld, everyone had a responsibility to battle against them. Moreover, it would be much easier to visit the heavenly phoenix divine maiden and strike a conversation with her if they developed camaraderie in battle. Beings of the netherworld were starkly different from beings of the immortal realm. All of them were surrounded by a sinister and eerie aura. They could be easily recognized with a glance. If the immortal realm was yang, then the netherworld would be yin. If the immortal realm was fire, then the netherworld would be water. These 2 realms were like the 2 sides of a coin. Their stark differences stemmed from the essence of their very being, and this wasn't a difference that could be erased. The members of the Netherworld army were all humanoid, yet some of them had horns, while others had tails. Moreover, due to the sinister aura that surrounded them, they appeared completely different from the human forms of the demonic beasts from the immortal realm. Most of them wielded spears, while a few of them wielded swords or sabers. Their battle prowess ranged from the Mountain River tier to the Sun Moon tier. The battle prowess of the Purple Moon army was identical to their opponents. Thus, the battle was extremely intense and dangerous. Ling Han didn't speak, and immediately started to attack the enemies. He didn't wield his divine demon sword, and simply used his fists to smash his enemies into pieces. Although he wasn't using his most powerful techniques, he had already obtained a wisp of heaven's might. Thus, his fists naturally possessed a profound might. If his enemy weren't as powerful as him, they would be wounded if they were scraped, and they would be killed if they were hit. He was like a killing machine, and he was essentially able to kill an enemy with each punch. He placed their corpses in the Black Tower, could use these to exchange merit points, so he naturally wouldn't waste them. After killing a dozen or so Netherworld soldiers, he finally attracted the attention of an elite. It was a Netherworld elite who was dressed in a full suit of armor. He brandished his spear as he charged toward Ling Han. Humph! There was a humph, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden also leaped over. There was a pair of phoenix wings that measured 50 kilometers in length on her back, and they possessed raging flames that could incinerate everything within 500 kilometers with a single flap. Tens of thousands of flaming feathers burst from the phoenix wings and shot toward the Netherworld elite. "I've got this place under control. You go somewhere else," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said. "TSK, are our hearts connected? She already knows to come over and protect her husband?" Ling Han laughed loudly, and didn't linger around. He immediately charged toward the other Netherworld beings. Like a knife through hot butter, he easily massacred the weaker Sun Moon tier elites. With his help, all of the weaker Sun Moon tier elites were quickly killed. Right now, only the 7 consummate level elites remained. They had no desire to continue fighting, and they quickly retreated and fled into the distance. The Purple Moon army pursued them for a while. However, elites at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier weren't easy to kill. In the end, they weren't able to kill any of them, and were only able to severely wound one of them. "Little brother, thanks for your help." The members of the Purple Moon army thanked Ling Han after counting their losses. "Fighting against the Netherworld is everybody's responsibility," Ling Han said. He then turned to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden and said, "Miss, thank you for helping me just then." Chapter 1247. Love Letter. "Have we met before?" the heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked in slight confusion. This man looked extremely unfamiliar, yet the look in his eyes gave her a familiar feeling. In fact, it actually sent a slight ripple through her heart, which had already been unfeeling toward the opposite gender for a long time. "As expected of my wife. Sure enough, she's caught on to something." Ling Han smiled and said, "I'm sure we haven't." "That's right, handsome brother. What's your name?" There were quite a lot of young women in this brigade, and many of them winked at him meaningfully and boldly. Ling Han glanced at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden before replying, "Ling Han." "Ah!" The heavenly phoenix divine maiden involuntarily let out a soft cry. "Sister Heavenly Phoenix, what's wrong?" a few women asked as they looked at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden shook her head and said, "It's nothing." This was probably a case of 2 people having the same name. Her Ling Han had died in the lower realm over 10,000 years ago. "Ladies, I have a lot of alchemical pills on me. I guarantee they can treat all kinds of wounds and cure all kinds of illnesses." Ling Han decided to win their trust, so he retrieved a large number of alchemical pills. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was clearly going to remain in the Purple Moon army for quite a while longer. However, the Purple Moon army didn't really welcome men. Thus, Ling Han wanted to get on good terms with these female soldiers so that they could look after the heavenly phoenix divine maiden for him. The women were all overjoyed. Alchemical pills were one of the most valuable things in the cultivation world. Although a single pill wasn't as expensive as a god tool, the fact that they were expendable items made them far more expensive in the long run. Yet, Ling Han was actually handing out a large number of alchemical pills. He was being so generous that it was almost profligate. "It's fine, I'm an alchemist, so this is nothing," Ling Han said with a smile. The female soldiers were stunned upon hearing this. He was an alchemist. These were people who enjoyed a transcendent standing. Alchemists were also divided into 20 minor levels, each of which corresponded to a cultivation level. Moreover, if an alchemist and a cultivator were of a corresponding level, the alchemist would definitely enjoy a higher standing. This was determined by demand. The eyes of many female soldiers lit up. The cultivation world was brutal. Although cultivators seemed mighty and glorious, no one knew whether they would live to see the next day. However, alchemists enjoyed a far safer life. As long as they didn't involve themselves in disputes between cultivators, they would enjoy a transcendent standing as someone who was respected and needed by everyone. Thus, if they wanted to marry someone, alchemists would definitely be the best choice. "Grandmaster Ling, what level alchemist are you?" some female soldiers asked. "I just became a level 8 alchemist," Ling Han replied with a smile. In order to help his wife, Ling Han was truly going all out. Upon hearing this, not only were the younger soldiers charmed, but even older soldiers at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier became attracted. There was a bright glimmer in their eyes as they gazed at him, and it was almost as if they could swallow him whole. He was definitely a wealthy man. However, whether or not he was genuinely a level 8 alchemist still needed verification. After all, he had merely claimed this himself. Anyhow, Ling Han only wanted them to hold him in slightly higher regard. That way, he would have an excuse to tag along with them. After all, he was only an alchemist, so his battle prowess was naturally very weak. Although the Purple Moon Army forbade men from joining, this didn't mean that the women in the army all despised men. In reality, the large majority of them were very normal. In fact, there was even a small number of them who were especially open and promiscuous. Living in this place meant that there was a risk of dying at any time. Thus, the relationships between men and women also became far more relaxed and casual. If it wasn't for the military regulations of the Purple Moon Army, perhaps they would have become a prostitute army already. With his identity as an alchemist, Ling Han naturally captured the hearts of many young women. This made him realize that he had perhaps overdone it. However, for the sake of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, he still retrieved his cauldron and refined some pills. Divine pills under level 5 could be refined in under a day, and the large majority of the Purple Moon Army was also at the Mountain River tier. Thus, Ling Han standing with their army climbed exponentially when he refined and distributed these pills. Although some of them still refused to believe that he was a level 8 alchemist, with his young age and all, they admitted that he was at least a level 4 alchemist. However, being a level 4 alchemist was still extremely impressive. After all, Ling Han was far too young. If he was already a level 4 alchemist at such a young age, how difficult would it be for him to become a level 5, 6, or even 8 alchemist in the future? Thus, after a few days of interaction, at least 90% of the female soldiers had their hearts captured by Ling Han. If they had spare time, they would run to his tent to flirt with him. "Sister Heavenly Phoenix, help me deliver this letter to Grandmaster Ling." In a small and dense forest, a middle-aged woman tugged at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's sleeve as she handed her a folded letter. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but feel astonished. This middle-aged woman was called Zhu Liyun, and she was a good friend that she had made in the Purple Moon Army. Their cultivation levels were identical, yet Zhu Liyun was far older than her. In fact, she was already over 1,800,000 years old. Thus, even taking into account the lifespan of an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, she was still a middle-aged woman. "Big Sister Yun, don't tell me you're attracted to that person?" the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said with a smile. An embarrassed smile appeared on Zhu Liyun's face, and she said, "Even you're teasing me." She stomped her foot lightly as she spoke. Seeing this middle-aged woman act like a young girl, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't but chuckle, and asked, "Why don't you deliver it yourself?" "I'm embarrassed, of course." Zhu Liyun appeared especially fidgety as she spoke. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shook her head and said, "That person might not actually be a level 8 alchemist. Moreover," she didn't want to say this directly. Ling Han was so young, so why would he be attracted to a middle-aged woman? There were so many young and beautiful women throwing themselves at him. So how could he settle for someone like Zhu Liyun? Not only was she old, but her appearance was also far too ordinary. Are you worried that sister isn't beautiful enough? A confident smile spread across Zhu Liyun's face, and she said, looks aren't everything. Moreover, I'm at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier, so there's a great chance that I'll advance to the heavenly body tier in the future. If he's smart, he'll know that marrying me is most beneficial to him. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but shake her head in her mind. By the looks of it, her friend wasn't truly in love with Ling Han. Instead, she was in love with his identity of an alchemist. In the end, she nodded and said, okay, I'll deliver the letter for Big Sister Yun. Remember to say some good things about me. Zhu Liyun hurriedly pulled the heavenly phoenix divine maiden back, and said, you're extremely beautiful, so men will definitely listen to you. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden frowned upon hearing this, a hint of displeasure on her face. Ah, look at me, I accidentally made my sister unhappy. Zhu Liyun hurriedly apologized, saying, sister said that by accident, so don't take it to heart. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden nodded and said, I'll deliver the letter for you, sister. She walked to Ling Han's tent and asked, is Grandmaster Ling here? Yes. Ling Han immediately walked out from his tent upon hearing this voice. Although he had captured the hearts of numerous middle-aged and young women, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden wasn't one of them. Moreover, she had purposefully kept her distance from him, giving him no opportunity to talk to her one-on-one. Now, his opportunity had finally come. A look of displeasure appeared on the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's face when she saw Ling Han's passionate gaze. However, she was here at the request of her friend, so she still handed the letter to him, saying, one of my sisters asked me to deliver this letter to you. She's a shy person, so she was too embarrassed to deliver it by herself. Love letter. Ling Han guessed the contents of the letter after taking a glance at it. A strange look appeared on his face. Wife, oh wife, you're actually delivering a love letter for another woman? Do you know what on earth you're doing? Chapter 1248. Reunited. Ling Han didn't accept the letter. Instead, he just chuckled softly. What's so funny? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked unhappily. That, are you sure you won't regret this? Ling Han asked. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden didn't understand what he was trying to say. She waved the letter in her hand and said, Big Sister Yun is a good person. I hope you can cherish this opportunity. Pooh! Ling Han almost spluttered aloud. Big Sister Yun. He had listened around these few days, and he knew that the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had a good friend called Zhu Liyun. However, she was a middle-aged woman. Auntie, is it really good for an old cow to eat fresh grass one? Although absolute age was relatively unimportant to immortals, relative age between partners should still be similar, right? Ling Han couldn't help but shiver upon thinking of Zhu Liyun's slightly aging appearance. He was so traumatized that he probably couldn't eat for a year. Say, I traveled tens of millions of kilometers to look for you, yet you're pushing me into the lap of some other woman. Moreover, it's a woman who can almost be my great-grandmother. Is that really good? Ling Han asked with a smile. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden's expression instantly became cautious. Sure enough, this man was having indecent thoughts about her. Someone as beautiful as her was a rare sight even in the immortal realm. Thus, it wasn't surprising that this man was interested in her. However, her heart had become like a block of frozen ice already, and it wouldn't melt for another man. Please watch yourself, she said. The most important thing is to cherish the people before you. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. I wholeheartedly agree. One has to cherish the person before them. Ling Han gazed at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden lovingly, and said, It's been 10,000 years, and you haven't changed a single bit. What nonsense are you speaking? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden said coldly. Hee hee. Ling Han chuckled, and then used his divine sense to transmit a series of sounds. A look of disbelief instantly appeared on the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's face, and she cried in astonishment, How do you know my name? The Cloud Phoenix tribe was a bloodline descendant of the ancient True Phoenix. Moreover, the bloodline of the True Phoenix would awaken in the tribe members who possessed the purest of bloodlines. The most unique aspect of this awakening was that one would awaken their true name. This was a name that was imprinted in their bloodline, and only the owner of the bloodline would know this name. True names were of utmost significance to True Phoenixes. Once activated, their true name would increase their power explosively. Moreover, according to ancient tribe rules, there were only two options if one's true name was revealed to a second person: marry them or kill them. In her entire life, she had only revealed her true name to one man. However, that man should have been dead already. Who on earth are you? She yelped in astonishment. The fact that he was called Ling Han was already strange enough, yet he had actually spoken her true name as well. Stupid girl, you bullied me for so many years, yet you've forgotten me just like that? Ling Han said with a smile. Ling Han. You're really Ling Han. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's mind was numb with shock. She was in absolute disbelief. It's me, I'm back, Ling Han said with a nod. But how is this possible? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said in confusion. Nothing is impossible, Ling Han said. He sighed in emotion before continuing. 10,000 years ago, I went to explore an ancient site. However, I came across great danger, and ended up having my physical body destroyed. My divine sense miraculously survived, though, and I was finally given a second lease on life 10,000 years later. I opened the sky and came to the immortal realm, for no other reason than to find you. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was still lost in shock, and she said, You actually opened the sky? Back then, Ling Han could barely resist when he was bullied by her. Although she had thought of him as her husband in the depths of her heart, her personality was extremely proud. So, how could she treat him gently? However, even she had possessed no confidence in opening the sky. Ling Han had been so weak back then, so how had he suddenly become so strong now? Haha, change is the only constant, and the wheel of fortune turns. I'm no longer a fool who only knows how to refine pills. Ling Han smiled and said, Say wife, I was bullied by you quite a lot back then. However, when my cultivation level draws level with yours, it'll be time for me to bully you. Who's your wife? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's face instantly flushed red with embarrassment. She finally believed that this Ling Han was the Ling Han from before. The fact that he could speak her true name was proof nothing could be as convincing as this. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Then who referred to themselves as the Ling family's widow? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was extremely embarrassed. She had called herself the Ling family's widow to commemorate Ling Han and to make her determination clear. She wanted to prevent other men from having any thoughts about her. Now, however, her legitimate husband had reappeared before her. Ling Han pointed at the letter in her hand and said, Say, wife, do you still insist on handing that letter to me? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden became even more embarrassed, and she instantly shattered the letter to shreds, saying, Don't tease me. Hee. Ling Han shuffled over and said, Come here, wife, it's already been 10,000 years. Aren't we going to reunite with a kiss? Go away. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden hurriedly pushed him back and said, We haven't seen each other for 10,000 years, yet you've become such a smooth talker. Have you been with other women? When she said this, killing intent instantly started to emanate from her body. How proud a person was she? Back then, she had been a top echelon elite in the lower realm, someone who could compete for glory with the Sword Emperor and the Saber Emperor. Her personality was like that of a queen. So, how could she tolerate sharing her man with other women? Cold sweat formed on Ling Han's forehead. The instincts of women were truly terrifying. He had barely begun to flirt with her, yet she had already caught on to something. Right now, you're my only wife in the immortal realm, he said hurriedly. This was a big fat truth. Lu Yutong, Shui Yenyu, and the others had all been taken to the celestial realm by his jealous little lover, Hun Yo. As for Empress Luan Xing, she wasn't technically his wife yet. Thus, he was being completely honest. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was half convinced and half suspicious. Why did his admission sound so quirky? If he didn't have any other woman, he could have just said that straight up. Why did he need to specify the immortal realm? However, he had arrived after opening the sky, which meant that the lower realm had also ascended to become a part of the immortal realm. Since he had specified the immortal realm, that naturally encompassed the lower realm as well. However, why did she feel like she was missing something? Why did you say right now? She asked. Ling Han chuckled and said, don't you want to hear about my experiences during these past years? An expression of curiosity and emotion appeared on her face. She had thought Ling Han dead, yet he was standing before her right now, alive and well. She was so delighted that she had forgotten to ask him about his experiences. However, she naturally wanted to hear about all his difficulties and exploits. Ling Han recounted his experiences. He naturally skimmed over the events of the lower realm, not mentioning Lu Yutong, Zhu Xian'er, and the others even once. Only when he started to recount his experiences in the immortal realm did he focus heavily on Empress Luan Xing. These two were his future wives, and perhaps they would even make love on the same bed in the future. Just thinking about this made him excited. Thus, he naturally had to give her a warning. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was slightly displeased. This man was actually chasing another woman. Although he hadn't succeeded yet, this didn't change the fact that he was trying. If she learned about his relationship with Lu Yutong and the others, she would definitely explode in rage. Ling Han couldn't help but praise himself in his mind. Chapter 1249. Falling Out. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden only left Ling Han's tent after a long time. She learned about many of his secrets, though she still didn't know about the existence of the Black Tower yet. There were far too many people here, and the environment was also too complicated and chaotic. Ling Han would wait until it was just the two of them before bringing her into the Black Tower. Anyhow, one couldn't easily leave the army after joining. They needed to earn merit points if they wanted to leave. Thus, the most important task right now was to fight against netherworld enemies. Moreover, the army placed a lot of stress on collectivism, so it would be useless even if he retrieved the netherworld corpses from his Black Tower and handed them to her. If he did so, she would need to divide the corpses equally among everyone. This was why the army was safe, yet accumulation of merit points was slow. The army didn't promote individualism, promoting collectivism instead. Thus, Ling Han needed to wait until the heavenly phoenix divine maiden retired from the military before he could be together with her. Sister, what did he say? Zhu Liyun asked nervously when she saw the heavenly phoenix divine maiden return. There was a shy expression on her face. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but feel guilty. Could she say that Ling Han had always been her man? Just that they had only reunited after 10,000 years? She had initially gone to deliver a love letter for her friend. In the end, however, she had ended up striking a relationship with her friend's love interest. She wasn't sure what to say. Zhu Liyun's expression changed drastically, and she asked, did you hand the letter to Grandmaster Ling or not? Big Sister Yun, he's not suitable for you. It's best that you forget about him. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden said persuasively. Zhu Liyun remained silent. She stared at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden for a moment before saying, you didn't fall in love with him, did you? This wasn't incorrect. However, she had fallen in love with him a whopping 10,000 years before Zhu Liyun. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't explain this, so she could only remain silent as she gazed at her friend. Good job, heavenly phoenix divine maiden, good job. Zhu Liyun was infuriated, and she pointed at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden before shouting, T6, I treated you like a sister, yet this is how you repay me. You even stooped as low as stealing your sister's man. Why don't you go die? Anger spread across the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's face, and she said, to say nothing of whether I interfered or not, do you really think Ling Han would have definitely liked you? Why not? Zhu Liyun shouted. I'm at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and he's merely a level 4 or level 5 alchemist. Truth be told, it's actually he who is punching above his weight. However, even I'm not complaining about that. So what does he have to be dissatisfied about? Auntie, you're truly narcissistic. Right now, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden naturally knew that Ling Han hadn't been lying. He was genuinely a level 8 alchemist. Thus, those at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier truly weren't all that special before him. Their standing was at least a level below him. Firstly, you're not beautiful. Secondly, you're already a middle-aged woman. Thirdly, your status is at least a level below him. So, what right do you have to say that Ling Han's punching above his weight? Initially, she had felt guilty about not delivering the letter for Zhu Liyun. However, anger rose in her heart when she heard Zhu Liyun's words, and her feeling of guilt vanished completely. In any case, she had never owed Zhu Liyun anything. B*Tsich, our friendship is done. Zhu Liyun flung her hands and left. In reality, she hadn't been too shy to deliver the letter before. It was just that she had wanted to give Ling Han the impression that she was reserved. However, how could Ling Han be interested in her? Even a seductive beauty like Lin Yuqi hadn't been able to move him. So, how could an ordinary-looking middle-aged woman appeal to him? More importantly, they didn't know anything about each other, okay? After suffering a polite yet firm rejection from Ling Han, Zhu Liyun returned to her tent with a dark expression on her face. There was venom in her voice as she said, "Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, I only became friends with you because of your beauty and the fact that you might have gotten into a relationship with some powerful figure. However, you actually stole my man." "Humph. Since the Xie clan is looking for you, I'll give them some help." "And that despicable man." He tried to sugarcoat his words, saying that he was already in love with another woman and that we were all unsuitable for him. "Hey, isn't it simply because that B*Tch is more beautiful than me? You dare to humiliate me like this? Humph. When the Xie clan comes, I'll get them to kill you along with that B*Tch. You're merely a level 4 or level 5 alchemist, yet you actually dare to act so arrogantly." Humph. She released a bird that was only the size of a bee. It was a hummingbird. Although it didn't possess any offensive ability, its speed was incredibly quick. In fact, its speed was so quick that it was on par with Heavenly Body Tier Elite speed. She had only managed to capture this hummingbird by luck. After giving it some training, it was now her messaging tool. She was an experienced Sun-Moon Tier Elite, and with her merit points, she could have already retired from the military dozens of times over. However, she chose to remain in the Purple Moon Army. This was because staying in the army was much safer than venturing alone. Moreover, the steady income of merit points would allow her to purchase all kinds of alchemical pills, god tools and such. When she had first arrived at the two-realm battlefield, she had merely been at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Now, however, she had already advanced to the consummate level. She had only been able to achieve this by exchanging her merit points for a large number of alchemical pills. Of course, her own talent couldn't be discounted, either. Otherwise, just alchemical pills alone wouldn't have helped her advance so rapidly. After so many years in the Purple Moon Army, she had naturally formed her own network as well. Now that she had released her hummingbird, the Xie clan would receive her news in no time. Within 2 months, members of the Xie clan would appear here. Just you two wait. With Ling Han's help, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's reputation in the Purple Moon Army increased by the day. Everyone became aware that Ling Han was only so generous because he was pursuing the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He was giving them alchemical pills so they could help him convince her. In the following few days, the Purple Moon Army came across netherworld beings several times. Each time they achieved victory. During these battles, Ling Han provided them with many explosive thunder pills. Although such a pill could only increase their battle prowess by 1 star, having an entire brigade increase their battle prowess by 1 star was quite a terrifying notion. However, their continuous victories also caught the attention of the Netherworld. In the end, the Netherworld deployed a powerful army to hunt them down. There were 50 members in this army, and each of them was at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. This was an unstoppable force, and the Purple Moon Army didn't dare to battle them at all. They immediately chose to retreat. The aim of their trip was to destroy some netherworld beings and to find some realm spirit stones. They had destroyed a fair number of enemies now, though they still had yet to find a single realm spirit stone. This left everyone disappointed. However, since they had already attracted the attention of more powerful elites, the brigade decided to return to the main encampment. They would venture out again after laying low for a while. Since Ling Han couldn't join the Purple Moon Army, he didn't plan to follow them back. He would explore this area by himself. He had the safety of the Black Tower anyway, so the dangers of the two-realm battlefield were relatively insignificant to him. He wanted to kill more netherworld beings and accumulate more merit points, as doing so would allow him to obtain more godly metal. Moreover, he would strike it rich if he managed to find some realm spirit stones. Doing so would allow him to obtain an exorbitant amount of godly metal. Right now, elevating the quality of the divine demon sword was of utmost importance to Ling Han, only below that of increasing his own strength. He decided to venture into the depths of the two-realm battlefield and kill more netherworld beings. Chapter 1250. Netherworld King Tier. The old ginseng and rabbit both supported Ling Han's decision to venture deeper into the two-realm battlefield. After all, they still hoped that he would pummel some netherworld elites and exact revenge for them. By and large, there were only Mountain River Tier and Sun Moon Tier cultivators in this two-realm battlefield. Elites at the Heavenly Body Tier would rarely ever appear. Once they appeared, it would signify an elevation in the severity of the battle. Although there was an ongoing conflict between the two realms, a large-scale war hadn't erupted for many years. All the conflicts were cautiously confined to controllable areas. Moreover, it was relatively dangerous to venture deep into the enemy's territory, whether one was an immortal realm elite or a netherworld elite. This was due to the starkly different regulations of heaven and earth. When in enemy territory, one's battle prowess would fall significantly. Under a different set of regulations, one would only be able to use their power and not their regulations. In fact, even one's power might be suppressed. Not only that, but the higher one's cultivation, the more severe the suppression. Take for example, Ling Han. His power was incredible, yet due to his cultivation level, he wasn't able to comprehend higher-level regulations. Thus, even though his power surpassed 6 stars, his battle prowess could only surpass 6 stars as well. If his opponent possessed a power similar to his, yet they were able to grasp higher-level regulations, they would be able to make up for any shortcomings in their martial arts techniques. In fact, they would even be able to use their martial arts techniques to suppress him. After all, power was only one part of battle prowess. If an immortal realm elite at the high extreme of the Heavenly Body Tier went to the netherworld, perhaps their battle prowess would fall to the medium extreme, or even low extreme. This would be incredibly dangerous. As a result, the elites of both realms didn't dare to act wantonly. Usually, they would just guard their own side of the two-realm passageway. If an enemy elite dared to go over, they would simply kill them, easy and enjoyable. However, Ling Han's strong suit was his power, and his cultivation level was also relatively low. Thus, the suppression of the netherworld regulations wasn't especially evident on him. In other words, he would barely be affected even if he ventured into the netherworld. Moreover, he had refined the demonic power source of a demon master. Although it had only been a small amount, demon masters were the most powerful beings of the netherworld. As long as he circulated this demonic chi, he naturally wouldn't be suppressed by the regulations of the netherworld. This was an extremely important advantage. Ling Han wandered through the two-realm battlefield and familiarized himself with the ever-changing regulations. He tried his best to harmonize himself with the regulations of the two realms. Right now, he was essentially cultivating with the regulations of both realms. It was just that he was drawing on lower-level regulations. However, this was perfect for his current cultivation level. After a dozen or so days, Ling Han became completely accustomed to this place. He had taken to it like fish to water. In this two-realm battlefield, both the cultivators of the immortal realm and the netherworld would be suppressed to a certain degree. However, Ling Han wasn't affected at all, could maintain 100% of his battle prowess. However, he hadn't managed to find a single realm spirit stone in his dozen or so days here. This left the old ginseng and rabbit extremely displeased. "What a cheap place," the old ginseng grumbled. He seemed tired, and he retrieved a doo-doo to wipe the sweat off his forehead. "If I had known this earlier, I might as well have stayed back to watch those women change. We didn't even find that netherworld brat," Rabbit said angrily. There was a cold glint in his completely red eyes. Meanwhile, Ling Han sat down, planning to grab a bite. Even in a place like this, he couldn't shake off his habit as a foodie. He started a fire and placed some demonic beast meat in a large pot. He then added some nutritious godly medicines. It wasn't long before a fragrant smell wafted from the pot. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh in emotion. There were no demonic beasts to hunt here, so a bite of meat eaten would mean a bite of meat less. What would he do when he ran out of meat? Add an egg in. I've heard that eggs are very nutritious. There was an egg in Rabbit's paws, and he was just about to toss it into the pot. Grandpa Ginseng agrees. The old ginseng raised his arms in approval and said, "Before I achieved Tao, I was almost killed by an eagle and a rabbit. Now's the time to exact revenge. Uncle Rabbit will eat you." Rabbit shot back. This old ginseng actually dared to taunt him. Pang! Ling Han threw a fist over. Rabbit actually dared to have thoughts about the egg that he had taken out to sunbathe. Ah! Rabbit wailed in agony. The old ginseng laughed triumphantly upon seeing this. After a short while, the nutritious meat soup was ready to be served. The three people started to eat voraciously. The old ginseng hadn't been a foodie before, yet the bad influence of the other two had already rubbed off on him. He was also a foodie now, and his appetite was more so tremendous. Rabbit kicked the sunbathing egg and asked, "Brat, what kind of egg is this? It seems fairly extraordinary." He still hadn't given up on his desire to eat this egg. "Bird egg," Ling Han replied. He moved the egg behind himself lest it was damaged by Rabbit's kicks. If that were to happen, cooking and eating it would be the only option. "Good bird or bad bird?" the old ginseng asked on purpose. He knew that Rabbit had an immense hatred for birds. Before achieving Tao, Rabbit had often been hunted by all kinds of birds. Rabbit's expression instantly became dark. Ling Han was just about to speak, yet his heart shivered, and he said, "Enemy!" Rabbit and old ginseng hurriedly prepared to tunnel away. They shamelessly left Ling Han to deal with the enemy by himself. If there were any problems, it was only natural that the strongest person dealt with it themselves. It would be naive to think that the old ginseng and Rabbit would fight with their lives on the line. "Fuck!" Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. Meanwhile, his gaze was fixed on a nearby hill. A slender figure had appeared there, and they were standing with their hands clasped behind their back. Their clothes fluttered in the gentle breeze. Netherworld being. This was obvious at a single glance. This person's aura was completely different from immortal realm cultivators. It was eerie and sinister, and it stood out as obviously as the sun in the sky. However, what astonished Ling Han was the fact that this person looked just like a human. Only their aura was starkly different. This person looked around 20-year-old, and they appeared especially strong and handsome. "It's him!" Rabbit and old ginseng exclaimed at the same time. They pointed at the man and shouted, "Little Han, that's the bastard who chased us. He's the netherworld being who chased Rabbit and the old ginseng, and wanted to make them into a rabbit ginseng soup. Kill him. Grandpa Ginseng is going to break his vegetarian fast and eat a netherworld human meat bun today." Rabbit and old ginseng both shouted enthusiastically. However, both of them retreated even further back. It was clear that they had no plans to charge over and fight to the death. The netherworld youth leaped over, landing 30 or so meters in front of Ling Han. A powerful aura radiated from his body. He was clearly at the sun-moon tier, yet he gave Ling Han a completely different feeling. Those in the immortal realm possessed the power of construction, while those in the netherworld possessed the power of destruction. These were two opposing regulations of heaven and earth. "Move aside," the young man commanded. "You don't have the right to die by my hands." "How bloody arrogant." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Maybe not, but perhaps you have the right to die by my hands." The young man's eyes twitched. Boom! 2 balls of flames flashed across his eyes, each releasing a devastating might. It was as if they could melt even godly metal. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared. He was a king tier, a netherworld king tier. This was a decent opponent. "I'm Ao Ziyun, the prince of the Black Dragon race." "Who are you?" the young man said calmly. The shadow of a black true dragon materialized behind his back. It brandished its teeth and claws, and it exuded an overwhelming pressure. Strange! Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. There's a dragon tribe in the netherworld? And their surname is also Ao? Why do they look just like the dragon tribe in the immortal realm? But the two realms are at odds with each other. Could members of these tribes have married each other? Ling Han smiled calmly and said, I'm Ling Han. If you can survive 3 of my attacks, I'll spare your life, Ao Ziyun said coldly. Chapter 1251. The stronger the enemy, the stronger I will be. Ling Han involuntarily laughed. In this world, there did not exist one person in the same cultivation level that could kill him within 3 moves. This Ao Ziyun was only in the low extreme, and his aura was slightly stronger than Ling Han's, so he was either in the late stage or the peak stage. You are very confident. Only stepping on those like you is interesting, Ling Han said. Ao Ziyun coldly replied, Humph, even if you do not die within 3 moves, I will still teach you a lesson. He had been enraged by Ling Han. The latter actually said he wanted to step on him. Did he even know what his status as a prince of the Black Dragon race represented? He moved, and delivered a palm strike. A humongous black dragon's claw immediately descended from the skies, pressing down on Ling Han. Wang wang wang. Multiple divine patterns appeared, interweaving into frightening black flames. Black dragons were skilled in using fire. This was a supreme divine flame, and would be able to burn anything. Ling Han was slightly surprised. He was a descendant of the true dragon. Powerful, he was indeed very powerful. He had a feeling that if he allowed the other to burn him like this, even one with a physique like his would be forcefully turned to ashes. Of course, this was definitely not something that could be accomplished in a short while. No matter what, it would have to take 10 to 15 days. However, it was still capable of doing so after all. For example, if there were a few more people with considerable abilities to entrap him, then these black flames would be greatly effective. Indeed, he could not underestimate the people in this world. Ling Han flicked a finger, and used the lightning sword technique. Xiao xiao xiao. Immediately, sword chi swept forth, sweeping out towards that dragon claw. Pu 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 pu. Sword chi swept over madly, and cracks rapidly appeared on that claw. Then, it collapsed, being forcefully shattered. Ao Ziyun couldn't help but be slightly surprised, and said, I had not thought that you would really have some ability. Hee, if I didn't have a bit of ability, I would not dare to roam around here, Ling Han replied calmly. Realization dawned on Ao Ziyun, and he asked, You are also here to participate in the 2-realm prodigy gathering. What 2-realm prodigy gathering? Ling Han muttered internally, yet showed nothing of his thoughts on his face and asked, You as well? Of course. If I am unqualified, who else would be? Ao Ziyun asked proudly. I forgot to tell you, I rather dislike arrogant people like you, Ling Han said. So what about it? Ao Ziyun smirked coldly. Then just let me first test the waters, and check whether you are qualified to participate or not. He moved once more, attacking Ling Han again. It was still another palm strike that had turned into a dragon claw. However, this time, the whole claw was entwined with black flames, and it was like a monster that had been nurtured by the heaven and earth, ready to destroy this world. Ling Han breathed in a mouthful of air, and then suddenly blew it out. Hoo! A wild gust of wind blew, sweeping over that dragon claw. Instantly, the fierce flames were forcefully extinguished, only leaving behind a barren dragon claw that was still determinately pressing downwards. However, the power of the attack had lessened greatly, and it no longer posed a threat. Involuntarily, a muscle twitched in Ao Ziyun's cheek. You did that on purpose, didn't you? And you call me arrogant? You blew out a breath of air and easily extinguished my divine flames, so aren't you even more arrogant? However, this brat really could not be underestimated. That black flame was his bloodline talent, and added with the fact that he had fused in regulations of the heaven and earth, it should not be something that could be blocked by someone who was only in the low extreme of the sun-moon tier. It should be known that he was a cultivator of the netherworld realm that could kill a great many in the high extreme of sun-moon tier with his black flames. All of them were unable to fight off the might of the black flames. He had not thought that they would instead be blocked by someone who was similarly in the low extreme. He was matched by one in the same cultivation level. What did that mean? That the other was also a king tier. A powerful fighting spirit rose up in Ao Ziyun. His cultivation level was actually higher than Ling Han's, as he was in the peak stage of the low extreme. If he could not very quickly suppress this opponent, then wouldn't that mean he was inferior to him? Humph, how could there possibly be geniuses in the immortal realm that could equal me? He said, smirking coldly. He leaped up and charged out. This time he had gotten serious. A black dragon was soaring furiously behind him, boosting his aura incredibly. Hong, he stimulated a burning black cloud. Wherever it passed, the ground would be burnt to the point of cracking. The rocks that protruded would be turned into nothing. Ling Han was unafraid. He used the star-plucking step and headed towards the other party. As he shot out a fist, it brought supreme forcefulness with it. Who cares if you are a dragon or a worm? In front of me, you would only be suppressed. Pang 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 pang. The two clashed. Two fists endlessly crashed into each other, every impact causing the whole heaven and earth to pale in color. They were obviously merely in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, yet this might would make one suspect that this was actually the deadly clash between two great elites of the heavenly body tier. Little Han used more force. Shatter every bone in this brat's body, and we'll be feasting on dragon ribs today. Grandpa Ginseng is already craving for food, wanting to drink the fresh blood of the netherworld jerk. Rabbit and the old Ginseng cheered on Ling Han from the sidelines, yet these two guys were really horrible, their words extremely insulting. Ao Ziyun was both shocked and furious. As an elite, he was naturally capable of listening in on all directions even in the midst of battle. The old Ginseng's and Rabbit's words naturally did not escape his ears. They actually said they wanted to dine on his dragon ribs? This bunch was really detestable. Yet Ling Han's abilities also stunned him. In the two-realm battlefield, the regulations were extremely muddled because of the clash between the two realms, and would cause a cultivator's battle prowess to fall greatly. Yet this kind of weakening ability applied to both sides. If I became weaker, so would you. Furthermore, in this place, the regulations of the netherworld should be slightly stronger. In theory, he should be slightly better off than Ling Han in being weakened. Yet the two of them were actually tied. He was obviously 2 sub-minor levels higher than the other. This was suppression on the level of 2 stars of power. Furthermore, he was at an advantage in terms of location as well, and even then, they were at a draw. Then if this had been a place where the regulations of the two realms were equal, wouldn't he have lost? Yet he did not know that Ling Han possessed demonic essence, and could adapt to the regulations of both realms, and was not the slightest bit weakened. The one at a disadvantage was actually just himself, but because he did not know, he couldn't help but be filled with a powerful wariness of Ling Han. How was this being from the immortal realm so freakish? He was actually able to fight himself to a draw even with the power gap of 2 stars between them. It should be known that he was also a super genius that had cultivated the mountain river tier to the true pinnacle. Quite strong but still not enough. Ao Ziyun was naturally not about to give up so easily. With a loud shout, he no longer stuck to competing with Ling Han in mere strength, but rather used a secret technique, causing his battle prowess to spike madly. Ling Han countered each move using his fingers like a sword, and used the lightning sword technique. Sword chi danced, both fast and vicious. You were strong, but so was I. It was really hard to decide who was stronger between the two of them. Not just Ao Ziyun was stunned. Even Ling Han himself felt secretly rueful. There were indeed innumerable prodigies in this world. It should be known that this was only a passageway of the two realms, and in the immortal realm, there were uncountable such passageways. If he encountered this kind of genius in any two-realm battlefield, then how many prodigies would there be in the entire netherworld? Chapter 1252. Heaven's Might vs. Dragon's Might. The true dragon was a very frightening creature. According to legends, it was a beloved child of heaven and earth. It was born powerful, and when it matured, it was a being of the Genesis tier. This would be enough to cause all other living beings to die of envy. Without needing to cultivate, merely eating, drinking, and sleeping, it would automatically reach the Genesis tier. However, being loved by the heavens was only limited to those with a pure bloodline of the true dragon. Once the bloodline watered down, they could not possibly reach Genesis tier as easily as that. Perhaps they might even be no different from ordinary living beings, and merely possess some special abilities. Like the dragon's might. The true dragon released its might, and even heaven and earth would pale. Ao Ziyun's bloodline was naturally far from pure, and if he wanted to break through to the Genesis tier, he could only depend on his own efforts and good luck. His bloodline would not have much influence on his chances. Of course, if he reached the Genesis tier, his bloodline would then completely become the bloodline of the true dragon, and if he married another true dragon, the children of this union would very possibly inherit this kind of bloodline and reach the Genesis tier easily. Presently, Ao Ziyun's dragon's might naturally could not compare to the true dragon's. After all, it was limited by his cultivation level, but when he released the might of his bloodline, it was still very, very frightening. Even if it was an opponent in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, with a strike from his dragon's might like this, his abilities would also drop greatly by at least 1 or 2 stars. What ancient divine beast was not extremely awesome? Furthermore, the true dragon was the head of the divine beasts, with only the true phoenix capable of matching it. As this strike of dragon's might shot out, it turned solid, and enshrouded a threshold of an entire 10 miles. Which also meant that within 10 miles, every living creature's battle prowess would drop by 1 to 2 stars. Facing my dragon's might, what right do you have to be insolent? Ao Ziyun smirked coldly. This brat from the immortal realm could not be considered weak. He actually forced him to use dragon's might. Wang, dragon's might attacked, and roared like a real dragon in Ling Han's mind, wanting to intimidate him. Dragon's might. Ling Han acted as if he felt nothing. What a joke. He was a man who had grasped heaven's might if worse came to worst. He had previously refined the demonic power source. And what level was the demon master at? The Genesis tier. Both were in the Genesis tier, so who would be afraid of the other? Moreover, Ao Ziyun's abilities were still far from reaching the level of a true dragon. And he still wanted to intimidate him like this. What? Seeing Ling Han was still standing proudly and firmly like a mountain, Ao Ziyun couldn't help the change in his expression. This was too inconceivable. This person was actually not affected by his dragon's might. He had tried it before, and those superior to him by at least 2 minor levels are those that similarly possess the bloodline of an ancient divine beast, such as the true phoenix or the black tortoise, would be able to remain completely immune to his dragon's might. Could it be that this young man from the immortal realm was also a descendant of a divine beast? This time, he had really met his match. Ling Han grinned widely and said, Don't worry, don't worry. I am not a descendant of a divine beast. My bloodline is very clean, and I am no animal. Little Han, who are you insulting? Who are you calling an animal? Rabbit flared up first, calling out loudly from a distance. He actually called him an animal? That was too insulting. Ao Ziyun's face was similarly ugly. The bloodline of the true dragon was his pride, but in Ling Han's eyes, it had actually been degraded to the level of an animal? He could not tolerate this. Then allow me to see how much better you are than an animal, he roared loudly. Multiple flaming black clouds surged out of his body as if they planned to directly burn the skies. As you wish. Ling Han channeled the heaven's might. Hong, the dragon's might in the surroundings was instantly dispersed. Ling Han laughed, and brandished his sword in a slash. Sword projections interwove closely, and he was like a divine emperor. So what if you were the son of the heavens? In front of the divine emperor, you would only be able to bow your head. At first, the two were still in a battle between equals, but once Ling Han showed the heaven's might, he gained the upper hand. Now the two of them had drawn their respective god tools, and the gap between Ao Ziyun and Ling Han was even wider. He was being completely suppressed. The divine demon sword burst out with endless sword chi. Every flash of sword chi was equivalent to a full power attack from Ling Han, and with the combined slash of millions of sword projections, who would be able to block that? Using the divine demon sword and not using the divine demon sword would place Ling Han at 2 completely different levels of battle prowess. Chapter 1253. Our realm has prodigies. Faced with Ling Han's aggressiveness, even Ao Ziyun could only make a tactical retreat. The two of them fought all the way, and Ao Ziyun kept retreating. Who knew how many mountain rocks they had shattered in their battle? Some mountain river tier cultivators they met on their way were almost scared witless. Whether they were beings of the immortal realm or the netherworld, they all ran far, far away. If they were affected by the aftermath of the battle, even if they did not die, they would be severely injured. Even elites of the sun-moon tier would be wary. What more when they were mountain river tiers? They only dared watch from afar, and did not dare to come too close. Otherwise, even they would suffer a calamity. Those who could watch the battle from a close distance would at least have to be in the high extreme of the sun-moon tier. However, when they discovered that the two people fighting were only in the low extreme, even those at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier broke out in a cold sweat. Prodigies like them would not possibly need tens of thousands of years to catch up to them. Damn it! Ao Ziyun shouted fiercely. Just think, he was invincible at his cultivation level in the netherworld, and had only ever lost to one person. Furthermore, that person was indeed an extraordinary genius. He was resigned to his loss, and did not feel that he had lost unfairly. But a freak like that had actually appeared from the immortal realm as well. I am dissatisfied. I am dissatisfied. A vein popped out on his forehead. Since the heavens allowed the birth of a prodigy like him, why would a person like Ling Han still come out, causing him trouble and grievance? Ling Han shook his head and said, "You look too highly upon yourself. With how big the world is, how many corners have you been to? What the world lacks the least is prodigies. Don't think too much of yourself." Ling Han, for example, had just been to 2 galaxies, and he had already met a considerable number of prodigies, like He Tao and Wu Wentong. Which of them was not a well-known figure of their generation? If they battled on an equal level, none of them would be inferior to Ao Ziyun. He had not been to the netherworld, but he believed that the size of the netherworld would not be less than the immortal realms. Even eternal river tiers could only travel in a limited range, so who knew how many prodigies there were in this world? There would always be someone stronger, and there was only the difference of a hair's breadth between confidence and arrogance. Ling Han, I admit that you are very strong, but compared to the prodigies of my realm, you still have a long way to go. Ao Ziyun knew that he could not possibly defeat Ling Han. Even if he used his divine seals and alchemical pills to obtain victory, that would not be a victory born from his own abilities. A conceited prodigy like him would naturally disdain using this kind of methods to win. He would only use them to save his life. In a battle of equals, a loss was a loss. Otherwise, it would only be more of a humiliation to him. But now that it involved the 2 realms, he was naturally not going to allow Ling Han to continue being proud. Oh, is that right? Ling Han smiled faintly. That's right. My realm has a prodigy whose name is Qi Huangji. He has only been cultivating for 200 years, and he has already broken through to the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier. Compared to him, you are like the light of a firefly as compared to the light of the bright moon. There is practically no need to mention you. Ao Ziyun belittled Ling Han greatly. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh secretly. If he was really so weak, then what would Ao Ziyun be considered? However, advancing into the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier in 200 years? This was extremely frightening. It should be known how many sun-moon tiers would be able to break through to the heavenly body tier. This ratio would probably be 1 to 10,000, but to be able to cultivate to pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier and break through to the heavenly body tier from there would only be 1 in 10,000 of heavenly body tiers that could accomplish that. How difficult was it? As difficult as climbing the skies. And this Qi Huangji actually used a mere 200 years to reach the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier, which also meant that if he was willing to, he completely could break through to the heavenly body tier in 200 years' time. With such a comparison, it was clear how utterly frightening this man was. Though Ling Han had only been cultivating up to 30 years at present, after he had crossed over into the immortal level, he had used the reincarnation tree's power many times, comprehending Tao underneath the tree, whereby a day would be equivalent to a year. In truth, the time that he had spent comprehending his cultivation level had far exceeded 200 years. Perhaps, this Qi Huangji has a treasure similar to the Black Tower, which can speed up the passing of time, he deduced. That was because Small Tower had once said that when the Black Tower recovered completely, it could unlock the ability to speed up time. Spending a day in the Black Tower, it could be 10 days, a month, or even several years in the outside world. This was not just speeding up the mind, but the whole person. Even cultivation could be sped up. Ling Han chuckled. Advancing quickly through the cultivation levels was not his trump card. The indestructible body he had obtained through the indestructible heaven scroll was. He was naturally not going to clarify this to the other party, and merely said, "Fine then I will wait to meet this person." "You will." 3 years later, at the Two-Realm Prodigy Gathering, Qi Huangji will let you taste the meaning of the word hopelessness. Ao Ziyun withdrew his spear. He took out a divine seal and stuck it on himself. Instantly, his speed spiked madly. Even if Ling Han used the star-plucking step, he could only pull even with him at most. Ling Han did not pursue. If he continued further, it would be the territory of the Netherworld. Who knew how many elites were standing by there? At present, his power was still not quite enough. He stopped and withdrew the divine demon sword. A powerful pressure rose up in his heart. If he wanted to overthrow the 5 sects, he would have to be at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier at the very least. If it was in mere terms of battle prowess, it was still not enough because the 5 sects had existed for so many years, so who knew how many trump cards they had? Thus, only if he was at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier would it be absolutely safe. In any case, he had already been waiting for so many years, so Ling Han did not mind waiting for a few more years. However, he definitely could not be rash and screw himself as well. Xiao. One after another, figures appeared. They were all in the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and they all targeted Ling Han. They were elites of the Netherworld, none of them hiding the killing intent in their eyes. This young man from the immortal realm was too freakish. They had to get rid of him as soon as possible. If they allowed him to mature and grow, that would be a great disaster for the Netherworld. Hee, you people are dreaming. There naturally were also elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier from the side of the immortal realm nearby too. They had long sensed the commotion, and had rushed over to watch the excitement. Now that they saw that those from the Netherworld wanted to do harm to Ling Han, they stepped out as well. Charge! The elites from the Netherworld were very decisive. The two realms had been at war for so many years, so they had long since become as incompatible as fire and water. What need was there to be reserved? They immediately began a bloody battle. "Young man, you go first," an elite from the immortal realm called out to Ling Han. In truth, no one would be willing to fight a battle that they were uncertain of winning. Hence, the elites of the immortal realm moved only for the purpose of protecting Ling Han's life, but did not think of eliminating all these beings from the Netherworld. If they fought this battle to the end, then no matter who was the last one standing, they would all have to pay a very high price. While it was true that everyone came to the two-realm battlefield to resist the invasion of the other realm, they were also aiming for merit points as well as realm spirit stones. Who would be willing to truly battle to the death? Thus, once Ling Han ran, this battle naturally could no longer be continued. Ling Han nodded, and used the star-plucking step. It was as if his figure was flying, and he instantly disappeared into the distance. Previously, the elites of the immortal realm could not stop Ao Ziyun, and now, the elites of the Netherworld were also unable to stop Ling Han. No, my present cultivation level is still too low. I have to think of some way to quickly improve my cultivation level. Otherwise, 3 years later, if I go and join that two-realm prodigy gathering, I will definitely not be a match for Qi Huangji, Ling Han thought as he continued running. Chapter 1254. Tempered by Divine Flame. Ling Han was confident, but definitely not arrogant. After breaking out of the siege, Ling Han stopped, and waited for the old ginseng and Rabbit to come over. When they arrived, Ling Han asked, "Rabbit, do you want to go to a good place?" "What good place?" Rabbit asked. He had not entered into the Black Tower yet. Ling Han laughed, and threw the old ginseng into the Black Tower first. Then he grabbed Rabbit, and the both of them entered together. What kind of place is this?" Rabbit could not be any more stunned. A spatial god tool was something that he didn't dare to even think about. There, go and cultivate there. Ling Han threw him underneath the reincarnation tree, and did not bother to explain. He just let the old ginseng and him torment themselves. After a short while, he heard Rabbit making a big fuss. He had really been stunned. If he comprehended Tao underneath this divine tree, then wouldn't there be a chance for him to reach the Genesis tier? Ling Han chuckled, and summoned Small Tower over. He asked, "Is there a way to quickly erase the alchemic poison in my body?" Small Tower sank slightly and said, "Yes." Ling Han was immediately elated, and quickly asked, "Quickly, tell me, what do I do?" If he could really speed up the dispersal of the alchemic poison in his body, he could reach consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier in a very short period of time. Then, he could advance into the pinnacle level, and then charge up to the peak of the pinnacle level. The 4th floor of the Black Tower is already unlocked. It can provide divine flame once every 3 months to temper your body. Underneath the divine flame, everything inside your body would be completely burnt, Small Tower said calmly. A muscle involuntarily twitched in Ling Han's cheek. Why did that sound so terrifying? However, the Black Tower could provide a divine flame to temper his physique. This was something that Small Tower had said long ago. It was just that Small Tower had not spoken of this again, and he was close to forgetting completely about it. He probed. "Then would I be in danger?" "Yes." Small Tower nodded. "If you cannot survive, you will be turned into ash. No, you wouldn't be able to leave even ashes behind, but rather would be burnt completely into nothing. And I would no longer have to bear with an idiotic master like you." "Fuck, you Tsundra Tower, will you die if you don't mock me?" Ling Han thought for a moment, and then asked, "Why didn't you tell me before?" "You want to die so badly?" Small Tower countered first with a question, and then said, "At first, I wanted to wait until you had reached the heavenly body tier before allowing you to temper your heavenly body, and boost up your physique to another level." Actually, Small Tower was a softie at heart. It had already planned out the future for Ling Han. It should be the direction that was most beneficial for Ling Han's development. It only liked to mock Ling Han all the time. Ling Han was pleasantly surprised, and asked, "You mean that I can further improve my physique, and reach the extent of surpassing 2 minor levels?" Surpassing 2 minor levels is a little exaggerated, but you would definitely be much stronger than now. Furthermore, if you were refined by divine flame, the biggest effect would be to allow you to gain the possibility of rising from the ashes, Small Tower said. Ling Han immediately looked determined and said, "There is no need to consider it. I want to be tempered by the divine flame." In the small world, his physique surpassed his cultivation level by a major tier. He was practically a monster among his peers, and it was impossible that anyone would be able to wound him. Even those a major tier higher than him would find much difficulty to accomplish this feat. But in the immortal realm, his physique had only surpassed a minor level, and that was too dangerous. In truth, as long as his battle prowess was over 4 stars, anyone could possibly injure him because 4 stars represented a minor level. Though 5-star geniuses were claimed to only exist in myths, there were still such prodigies in reality. Furthermore, Ling Han himself was this kind of prodigy. Fuck, this Tsundra Tower hadn't wanted to reply to him in the first place, and that was why it had acted dumb. Now that he thought about it, he was really naive that he would actually believe that a tool spirit would actually experience problems with hearing. "Go in." Small Tower shook slightly. The cauldron opened. Hong, ferocious flames immediately shot up into the skies. In comparison, Ao Ziyun's black flames were practically child's play. Ling Han couldn't help but grit his teeth. Jumping into this kind of divine flame, he would definitely be turned into ashes. Was this really tempering, or just him going off to his death? Remember, the only thing that can save you is the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. You need only continuously channel the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. As for other matters, forget them completely. Small Tower said seriously. To be capable of seeking life in death, and to return by rising from the ashes, that is the key. Don't ever think of resisting this kind of flame. That is an absolutely impossible thing to do. Because they are not divine flames, but immortal flames. Fuck. Moreover, he still hadn't suppressed the savage woman, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The 5 sects hadn't been obliterated, either, and he still had yet to find the mysterious assassin who had attacked him on his journey from the joint peace planet to the flying cloud planet. There were far too many people waiting for him, and there were far too many things that he still wanted to do, so how could he die here? A spark appeared in his mind as he strengthened his resolve to live. He channeled the indestructible heaven scroll in his divine sense. This cultivation technique tempered both the physical body and divine sense, and thus it could still be channeled even though only his divine sense remained. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, again and again. His divine sense finally escaped from the brink of destruction. However, this only protected the vitality of his divine sense, and prevented it from being incinerated. It didn't free him from the pain of being burned by the immortal flames. In reality, the longer he resisted, the longer he would be burned. The pain that he felt wouldn't decrease by an iota. Rising from the ashes. Small Tower's words flashed through Ling Han's mind. Resisting the immortal flames wasn't his aim. With his current abilities, it would be impossible for him to resist the immortal flames. The only reason he was alive was because he was in the Black Tower. His task was to comprehend the profound mystery of rising from the ashes. Meanwhile, his reference for this comprehension would be the Indestructible Heaven Scroll. A section of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll had come from the secret technique of the Immortal Phoenix. Thus, Ling Han would grasp the mystical power of rising from the ashes once he managed to truly comprehend this section of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll. Consequently, he would genuinely possess the power of indestructibility. Ling Han continued to analyze this section of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll as he endured the burning pain of the immortal flames. He hadn't noticed anything special about this section before, but now that he was being burned by the immortal flames, he suddenly developed a completely new understanding of it. So this is how it is. So that's what this meant. Oh, I never considered this before. He continued to exclaim in his mind. Although the immortal flames caused him great agony, they also allowed him to experience the feeling of death and rebirth. Of course, just experiencing this feeling wasn't enough. He also had to understand and comprehend it. Only by doing so would he be able to truly grasp this secret technique. Numerous golden symbols floated through his divine sense, distorting and shifting as they did. In the end, they transformed into numerous true phoenixes, all of which craned their necks and soared into the sky, boundless flames burning on their bodies. No, these weren't true phoenixes. They were immortal phoenixes. Ling Han was suddenly struck by enlightenment. Immortal dragons were probably of the water element, while immortal phoenixes were probably of the fire element. They each represented an extreme. Although the black dragon race that Ao Ziyun belonged to played with fire, they were a complete mongrel of a race. They couldn't compare to immortal phoenixes at all. Fire, 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 fire. Could it be that these immortal flames were actually left by an immortal phoenix? If this weren't the case, how could he still be alive? These flames were definitely related to the Indestructible Heaven Scroll, which in turn was partially related to immortal phoenixes. Otherwise, how could he comprehend the unique secret technique of the immortal phoenix rising from the ashes, through being burned by the immortal flames? The Indestructible Heaven Scroll had clearly referenced a portion of the immortal phoenix's secret technique. Ling Han's mind gradually became calmer as this realization flashed in his mind. He was confident in his comprehension abilities. Moreover, this was the Black Tower, so he definitely could comprehend the secret technique. Time slowly crept by. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. After 11 days, a spot of light suddenly rose from the cauldron. Small Tower instantly became excited, its body flickering between light and dark. It didn't have a physical body to begin with, and it was simply a holographic image of a tower. Small Tower immediately launched into action. Wang! The lid of the cauldron closed, instantly making the soaring flames disappear. The spot of light bounced around for a while before suddenly falling to the ground. Surprisingly, it was a glowing fetus. Inside the fetus was a small human. Comment. This was an infant. This was Ling Han. Success. Ling Han had finally comprehended the secret technique rising from the ashes. However, it seemed like something was off, as rebirth from this secret technique should have returned him to his original state. However, he had become an infant. Ha 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 ha. Small Tower couldn't help but burst into laughter. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.